after that, and then we could ask questions or have comments after that to get, hopefully have enough time. We kind of bypassed some of the city presentations previously when we got into discussions, so
Sure.
that'd be good to lead off with that, if that's okay with everybody. All right, all yours, Lee.
All right. I did, Nikki, you're on, right? You can hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. Went back, we worked looking at our budget, what we can cut, and I told you I would go back and look at not cutting essential services. And at this point, I can't. We're gonna cut services back so low, it's gonna be a problem, a bad problem. I have talked to school superintendent. They're standing at 3.4, and if that's the case where they're standing, then our recommendation is to leave our cost where we are, 3.4 for the schools. We stay with what we recommended. You lock in the 11, because what I've been talking to people this weekend, they've said no property tax increase. And I went, okay, so sorry. And I recommend tonight you lock in your meal at 11.5, and we go after 2 cents on the sales tax, which is 7. And that's full, year round and balanced at that point. And remembering, guaranteed, I'll be pulling from a couple places to some investments to put over in cash so I can float some things starting in August. So that will be done. But we're going to need that revenue, and I don't know how else to tell you. I'm at day 41, but and it's hard to remember. We're making some, pretty hard assumptions of what we can and cannot do. If I go in, this isn't overreacting, I will have to lay people off. We will wind up in arbitration with our union based on what I'm hearing from employees and what they intend to do. So that's putting us in a difficult position too.
Can you explain that a little bit more?
Breaching their contracts. Particularly laying off, changing salaries, changing hours, and it will be violation or change of the contract. Are they willing to negotiate? Right now, what I'm hearing is no. And so I'm somewhat painted in a corner. Well, I'm not. I am as a manager. This is difficult. But when I look at what's being required of us over the next couple of years with plans, I worked through looking at projects like the economic development comprehensive planning. I have locked in with grants, landfill coming up. I'll be talking to you about that. There's going to be additional costs there this year that are not anticipated. I'm trying to get prices together now. And those are on water test results. I'm going down. Some of the things we've looked at that we do have is, having some of the inventory in public works for our equipment. That some of that I can make it where we are, but that's going to be a big problem based on the history of damage and history of breakdowns on our equipment. It's going to happen. We need to go back and look at fee schedules. I think there are some things that we may charge too much for, things that we charge not enough for. Exemptions for use of facilities, we're really going to have to look at those. We give a lot away for free, and if that's what we want to do, to allow folks to go out and use those things, that's perfectly fine, but there's a cost to doing that. That's a big item for us. Building inspections, I've got one person, as you know, Cliff, who works a few hours a week. We're not able to keep up with those. They're not being done sufficiently. It's not his fault. We're sending out fines to folks. Nobody even responds. So I'm looking at getting legal involved and shutting people down. But my problem is that he can't handle some of the work with I mean, people, I ride around with him about once a week, and I'm looking at jobs that have gone on for a couple years that should not go on. I need additional help there. Either bring somebody in contract to help him administratively, but we've got to get work there. So I even looked at places like that, down to that kind of minutia of what can I cut? I can't. You know, we're not, and he's not able to do the job we've asked him to do. Lack of hours, but also lack of enforcement across the city. We need additional help. Waivers, tax exemptions on sales tax are killing us. We need to look at those things. And I appreciate, I think said, you know, what can be done? These are immediate actions. Well, some of it is what we have presented. When I go back with what Nikki and Dan and the departments did March and then April, and looking at the budget, I reviewed all of the changes and cuts. They made substantial cuts, and that's where we're sitting. Beyond that, we made some, but I believe Nikki and Dan and the departments did a good job to be able to put a budget together that allowed them to do their jobs every day. And I feel very comfortable in that they did what they needed to do. You know, I've already putting in place to do the audit on business and personal property will occur in October. So we're going to start moving in that direction. That is going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars based on my riding around and looking what's out there, and probably, well, I know not reported based on what I see. Now with our roads, I'm real concerned about road quality and drainage. Drainage is much more of a problem than I anticipated in the first couple weeks. But now when we've had some rain, being able to watch, not just snow runoff, but just rain. We've got culverts that are totally full. They don't drain. They've got to be cleaned out. Some have to be dug out. That's not in the budget, but yet I'm going to have to do it. We're causing some severe issues around housing and businesses because things are not draining to where they need to drain. I did take a look at some things. A couple of speakers made some good points about annexation. It's not a popular word. We just always called it the A word. Don't say it, but sometimes you have to. But I have discussed with some outside agencies and folks here about services being taken out to some of the folks outside of town that may not want to be annexed, but may want infrastructure, and then NJUS would need to sit down with them, but how we could upfront some of that cost. But the rates for water and sewer would be higher, and that's how you offset for your capital. But we're looking at how can we bring some of these things on to gain revenue. But a lot of these items call for upfront investment. Some of that may need to be a bond. So we're looking and digging everywhere we can. You know, issues of blight, you know, we're going to have help with that. No, we can't do everything this year, but I do 100% believe that if we're able to tell the story of the schools and the city and where we are, that additional 2 on the sales tax, we have to show people what it's going to pay for. Again, reiterate, when you decide what direction you want to go with that, we've looked at the timing. It would be the October election based on what we know with adoption of the budget and getting the election together. The other thing is we are not budgeted for a second election. So we would recommend, and then just remind me, October, 1st of October?
First Tuesday of October.
Of October for an election. That way we do not incur additional costs. So that would put us at January to receive whatever you allow us to do on the referendum, be it 1, be it 2. 2 is the recommendation at this time. That's where we are. Mr. Mayor and Council right now, and it's not a great position to be in. I did talk to Jamie a little while ago. She said she would try and come, but they have something going on tonight.
She just walked in.
So she's here. There she is. So we talked.
I gotta go back to the airport.
Okay.
I'm up at 6, but I'll come right back.
Okay. So we did talk, and she, we talked about her difficulty to be able to make additional cuts and standing at 3.4. So we are trying to investigate everything, but we're going to need help from the community this year. We absolutely are going to have help. And I've said before, but if we do any more, and Jamie can speak for herself, but if the city cuts any more, I do feel like I'm going to be negligent in my responsibility as manager. I've never used that term before, but I do feel that way. I feel strongly. And I feel like we can do a job, but we're going to need your help. And this is not a great day for me as a manager. No. It's not great news.
Before you came in, John, what we suggested is the city present their budget for the work session, which Lee's been talking about, and then maybe give the few folks we have in the audience a chance to speak, and then we could
Okay,
discuss if that's okay with you.
sure, that sounds like. a
And
great
whatever
plan.
questions the board has,
Then we can,
or the council has, we'll be glad to answer. And I have a couple of folks here, so, and people on standby. And of course, Nikki. So that's where we are.
So is there anybody out there in the audience that would like to make any comment at this time? And actually, we'll give it to Jamie first if she has any comments, or are you just for questions, being you have to run?
I am here to answer any questions. So, yeah, I'm gonna run out at like 5 till 6, then I will come back.
Okay, all right, Mrs. Thomas.
Sorry, I think almost all of you know me. I'm Margaret Thomas. I wasn't able to attend the meeting last week because I've been subbing a lot and managed to get colds all the time doing that. I live out of town, but I shop in town a lot and I pay a lot of sales tax. I would completely support increasing sales tax if it would allow the city to consider reinstating funding for some of the items that were zeroed out on the proposed budget. I have not made a habit of understanding the city's budget every year, but my understanding is that on behalf of the Nome Community Center, I'm the president of the board, that the all funding for Nest is currently zeroed out. It's a grand total of $35,000, which is not a significant amount in the context of what the city gets for it. I know that many of you remember when Nest was actually founded. There had been deaths. There still are deaths from exposure. It is completely untenable for a city in the Arctic not to have shelter available for people, especially during the winter. But my understanding is the community center has people on standby who would be available if there were to be a big storm in the summer during the non-regular months to come in and open up the building for shelter. But the Nome Community Center has done what it can do to mitigate the homelessness problem by opening up Home Plate, where 15 units are now housing people who previously would have been homeless, but there are still many, many, many more people here who come in from the villages temporarily or who live in Nome who need and depend on Nest. So it completely shocked me when I saw that was proposed to be zeroed out. The community center also receives relatively small amounts, I think about $20,000, or it may be that we've divided it up, but some amount for youth programming, some of that going to the Boys and Girls Club. Our situation with the Boys and Girls Club is that the statewide organization that we work with has experienced financial difficulties because they lost a big funding source. So to the extent that the Boys and Girls Club provides youth in town who don't have really anywhere else to go to be supervised after school, that is also an essential service that is provided. I believe we've also used some funding for Camp Crave. Again, this is for the youth who during the summer need that sort of activity. But I guess tonight my biggest concern is nests. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. So, thank you.
Thank you for your input there. Are there others? Please come to the podium, state your name for the record.
Hello, my name is Troy Walker. I support the sales tax, but also the such as the inflation rates for the gas. As I frequented the rec center since like the 80s and everything, the prices has stayed the same, and raising the prices up, and that would help out a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you. And then there's Brad. Anybody else? All right, thank you. We'll come back, I guess, Mr. Manager, to talk about the city's budget.
We really today is questions. I've gave a real brief synopsis about where we are, but the mill rate at the recommendations 11.5. We have until the last day of this month on schools, which their request is 3.4. That does include the pool, which would leave the pool in the budget on both sides. So that would be left. I tried to incorporate some funds that you can look at as far as Nest and the XYZ, the community center, and some of those projects. If we go to 7 and we're able to, we receive those funds, it's only half a year. You will be able to take care of those preschool and the other items that have been brought up in the last, I guess, my 3 meetings of programs that people do not want to see cut. So where we had been looking, and the biggest cuts of over 27% were made under the city and city personnel, and some of those are still stand. And we may ask if revenues go up in the year, and we're able to. There are some things, particularly if we get into a big snow or some sort of a issue with drainage, we're going to be able to cash flow appropriately, but you may have an extra 120 some thousand that we could make available to help, Mr. Cushman and his folks for equipment damage, but also additional cleaning and roadways. If you notice, they're doing an unusual amount of roadway correction and updates we're having. And I mean, you can say better than I, but I've been out with these guys digging these roads up that are sinking, and we're going back and going back and going deeper and going deeper. And based on what the engineers are telling us, they're doing the right thing, but our roads are sinking. And that is it environmental? Is it? Maybe, but they're sinking. And this is going to be continuous, it appears. And I'm really concerned about that. The safety, we get complaints every single week, every day about conditions of the roads. And they're out there hard as they can go. They're out there on the weekends trying to do this stuff. And of course, then we get complaints that we're cutting off traffic for it, but we apologize for our, trying to keep the roads up. And it's one of the major issues. I'm getting calls now on recreation. Why are we closed in the summer? Why do we close weekends? Getting a lot of that from visitors. the miners, others who are working here, about showers and needing those, and I absolutely understand that. And met with 3 mining company CEOs or COOs and asked them after the parade. I got to meet some of them and then meet on the side a little bit here in City Hall and said, what do your folks need as their employee? They employ people. And what do they need? And the recreation, the gym area, the workout area, and showers. Of course, now we're looking at, can we get somebody to open up washer and dryer and showers, do something commercially? And that's very possible. We won't have it till next year, but it's real possible. But they're asking about extended hours, and it's hard for us to do that if we don't have the money to do it, because I'm gonna have to have staff in there. So there's still demands being made of the public, and I get that. And so, the 11.5, go ahead and lock that in. We have until this weekend, basically, on the schools of the 3.4 or whatever it is that the board decides. If they're not able to make cuts, and that was, I think, as I understood it, both would cut around $500,000. And I've gone back and looked, and Jamie's gone back and looked, and I cannot speak for the schools, as I said, but I know for us, I'm absolutely going to shut services down in many areas of the city. And based on just not even, we're in a beautiful time of the year, based on service requests. I don't know if I triple that or multiply that times 5 in the winter, I don't know how we do it. I just don't know. And we're looking, and I've got departments looking, but I now have, based on potential layoffs, hour cuts, the arbitration would be real with our contractors or our contract employees. I appreciate them coming forward and talking to me about it, because I don't want to walk in or guide you in anywhere blind. And that's where we are, Mr. Mayor. And so we're recommending moving forward as a first reading at the 11.5 mil projection to go to referendum, the 7. Also putting an ordinance together whereby you say this is what the money is being spent for, it cannot go in the referendum. And we'll put that together over the next few days and then go to a second reading. Obviously, that's going to give the public more opportunity to come in and speak, which is great. We love to hear what they recommend and what they want and what they don't want. But I will say, Mr. Mayor, and even yesterday in events I've been to, people understand. They don't like it, but they understand the situation. I've yet to have anybody argue. They're like, well, I don't like taxes, nor do I. We've all paid plenty in our lifetime. It's, the city is in a tenable situation right now, and we've got to get out of this hole we can. If, with the ports, new businesses, Graphite One, all those, and we're going to grow, but we also have the growth pains, and we're going to have to do things to stay on top of it, including particularly roadways and infrastructure for these businesses. And tons of conversation about housing, where it goes, where it shouldn't go. So that's where we are right now. So tonight, I would recommend what we put in the budget for you this weekend. It's balanced, and to go forward with a sales tax referendum, hold the 11.5.
And the current mill rate is
11.5.
11.5, so
and we stayed the same. I did not hear from the council in talking to you together and also separately, different times, not everyone, that does not seem to be a likely move. So I have to make some assumptions. And I've yet to hear anyone in my presence say they wanted a property tax increase. They said, stay away from that, but we can support sales tax. We get it. We understand it. We don't like it, but we understand it. And that it spreads the cost to everyone. And it does. It's not great, but it seems to be the most popular as to our finding a solution of getting out of the situation we're in. And obviously, some of that is to build back our reserves so that we have sufficient cash flow and not beat that dead horse. You understand our situation there.
Go ahead.
So just to summarize or understand your summary, initially you had that the city would have a fund balance appropriation basically out of savings of $2,049,869, right? But instead of that, you are suggesting that we do the sales tax referendum to increase sales tax from 5 to 7%, which would bring in approximately 1.6 million.
Correct.
And then in addition, $500,000 transfer in from school bond fund, reassigning the funds to the general fund. Could you or Nikki explain that $500,000 a little bit more?
Nikki, do you want to start with that or?
To explain the transfer from the school bond fund,
Yeah.
Yes.
the school bond funds are considered assigned by the city council. So you can move those funds back to the general fund. There's approximately 1.2 million in the school bond checking, and just moving the 500,000 leaves plenty of funds to continue to cover our debt service.
When you say continue to cover the debt service, how long is that for? Like continue to cover the debt service for this fiscal year, for several years, or?
No, it will cover the debt service through when it matures in October of 2028.
Okay, are there other questions? Okay. How much is it? Oh, okay, I guess we were asking the council, but that's okay. What's your question?
So do you guys have a budget release funds on the new increase on electricity uses for the Nome utilities on the apartment complex?
Can you say that one more time?
The kilowatt rate hours for the Nome utilities on the increases on the 2 or 3 apartment buildings. Will that spread out just about evenly also?
That's not within our purview
Yeah,
here.
that's not a city revenue on the thing. It may assist the utility slightly, but at this point, we have not factored, anything into those because they're a couple of years out before they're ready.
Right, okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So I guess I'm not sure what the governor's, the school funding was, veto was overrode by the legislature. So I don't know what that does to the budget document or estimate that the school has at this point.
Talking about the BSA?
Yes.
They had planned, the schools, as I understand, had put in 680 and it has gone to 700. Granted, could that change? Sure it could, but the likelihood, I've been talking to the league, the AML, and they feel like it will stay at 700 based on what they're hearing and they're canvassing. And that does help the school some.
Said it was only about another, like 30,000.
Yeah, it wouldn't be significant.
I think if I might, Mr. Mayor, Nikki, we talked about that, the BSA, didn't we say it was probably 100 and like 126,000. We were talking, do you remember that?
That sounds like the number.
It was around 125 or 126, actually. Additional revenue above what they planned for.
So I guess it's just as far as some of the changes or reductions that have been discussed and already incorporated here. Is there like as you were talking about personnel reductions or hour reduction? And if there was some way to get to the public that information to know, okay, well, this facility's been open 50 hours or 60 hours a week, coming after the new budget year in June, it's going to be 30 hours a week. To just kind of highlight some of those things, I think might be helpful.
Nikki was working on those this weekend. Nikki, did we include, I know I looked at that document. We were working, what day was it, Sunday? Where you went back and looked at the original recommendations from the clerk and yourself up to this point, but you want to speak to that just a moment?
Is the question on positions that we removed?
Positions, but also, well, go with positions themselves. Start with that.
Okay, in admin, we removed the grant writer. We removed the full-time payroll accounting tech from finance. We removed one admin sergeant from the police, one police officer trainee, one CSO dispatcher, as well as one PO3 and CO3. In the rec center, we removed the program coordinator. Those are the removals that I have.
Yeah. And then we have, of course, on top of that, a freeze until we know what kind of revenues we would, once we have the referendum, based on that conclusion, and we will know about our freezes. But July 1st, basically, I'll be freezing open positions.
So you
until we
must
know.
not have had any vacant positions then,
Not many.
because I've gone line by line through this budget. I think there's about $74,000 less in the $1.8 million budget.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yeah, that's about it.
Administration actually went up. And I'm comparing the May 5th budget to this one. Correct me if I'm wrong, it went from about $8,500. And I'm comparing the budget
Mm-hmm.
that was submitted on May 5th, which is the first draft,
Yes.
very first draft. So your first draft must have been your best, most bare bones budget you could think of. Because what a difference a weekend makes. When we left here Friday, we were gonna look at $500,000 in cuts for both Nome Public Schools and in the city of Nome.
Correct.
Now you're saying we can't cut anything. Some minor cuts.
Minor.
And it was understood by all, unless I attended a different meeting, that there would be no layoffs. And now you're saying that there's going to be union problems because there's going to be layoffs. That's not what we talked about on Friday. So what's changed?
Without the revenue, well, there will be, and I did make that statement that there could be layoffs without the revenue. Without one of the options that we gave you, we would have to.
We were
to
assured that
freeze.
there wouldn't be any layoffs, and there would be some freezes, like, filling or not filling vacant positions. But it was pretty much agreed upon that there would be no, layoffs. So I'm a little unclear as about what your union problems will be if you don't lay anybody off.
Based on the work, because we've cut back on our ability to do certain work, just like the recreation center. hours at the museum, the library, and we want to avoid layoffs. But if we do not have the revenue, I cannot guarantee that. I can't guarantee it. Or the cash flow is a huge thing. Obviously, we've got to sustain ourselves. But based on the cash you have, if we do not have additional revenue, plus if we're unable to conduct like a bad winter, then we're going to be in trouble as far as conducting services.
So correct me if I'm wrong, Lee, but it sounds like because you're uncomfortable making any cuts in the city operating budget, you're also uncomfortable in asking Nome Public Schools to reduce their funding.
We've asked them. We've asked them.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
But because you're uncomfortable making any reductions in the city budget, you're uncomfortable in asking Nome Public Schools to make any reductions in
Absolutely
theirs. But you're willing to say, you know what, we're gonna charge forward and increase sales tax by 2%. The concern that I had, and I thought I was pretty, open about it on Friday, was that if the city and the Nome Public Schools don't make meaningful attempts to reduce spending, I think we're gonna have a harder time convincing voters to increase a 2% year-round sales tax. That's my concern. What happens if we don't make any meaningful cuts or cuts beyond what you think is meaningful, and we go to voters in October and they say no? What's our options then?
We will have to go deeper
Huh?
and cut services, additional services.
Do you think it's going to be more difficult to get voters to approve a 2% year-round increase instead of like a 2% seasonal increase or a 1% year-round increase like we talked about? That we could balance the budget with cuts from both Nome Public Schools and the city of Nome. Do you think it's going to be more difficult to convince voters that we've actually put our best foot forward?
I think we can go out to again, and talking to people, they understand the situation. I cannot account for school funding, how they adjust their budgets, what they do. But what's come back is that they cannot make additional cuts. So I can't second guess them. I can't. Jamie just walked in the room. The question was about school funding. So, she'll have to address what, they can or cannot do. But as I understand it, they feel they cannot. And if we intend to conduct the services that are expected, and we don't want layoffs, we're going to have to be where we are with this extra 2 pennies on the sales tax. We're going to have to. That's where we are. That's where your overall budget has been cut, is on the city side. Those are the bulk of the cuts.
Cut from what?
Well, from the original request and budget from Dan and Nikki, which was submitted, or when was that?
It didn't go to council.
It was
We
made,
cut it
work.
preemptively. We cut it preemptively.
you cut it from what the department heads initially submitted.
Yep.
But the first draft of the budget that we've seen is the May 5th, which I'm comparing to, right?
I'm not arguing that.
I'm not arguing with you, I'm just asking, I'm trying to
I'm
clarify.
just saying that we had already made like a 20% cut from the original ask from the department heads.
The original ask, sure.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with that.
Okay.
This is completely the opposite of what we talked about on Friday. Because on Friday at our work session, there was consensus, at least by a number of council members, that everybody was going to share in the burden or share in the pain or share in the pressure of balancing our budget. Asking voters for a 1% sales tax increase and a combined $1 million reduction in operating expenses on the city and Nome Public Schools combined. Now what you're saying is, we can't really make any cuts on either side. Let's go to the voters and ask for 2% instead. That's the change, right?
I cannot adjust the
Well,
school's
no,
budget.
that's what you're presenting.
That's correct. Can we sell it? Yes, I believe we
I
can.
hope you're right,
Oh, I hope I'm right.
because if you're wrong, Lee, we're in trouble.
Well,
We can't sell a 2% sales tax increase without making meaningful reductions from the initial draft budget, like I recommended. and the voters say no, how much are we gonna have to pull out of our savings account then?
Over $1 million.
More than that.
Yeah, I'm saying just with
Because we
changes.
won't have made any reductions in our operating expenses. I hope you're right.
So I guess,
What initial reductions are you talking about? The one which
Were you here on Friday?
well, I was here on Friday. Yes, I understand that. You said the initial reduction, so I'm assuming it's a past meeting, not on Friday. You said you spoke to him about some
We talked
reductions.
about this on Friday.
I understand that.
Okay. I guess I don't understand.
Well, what I'm trying to understand is you said there was some other discussions you've had in the beginning. There was some in the beginning, I don't know, May 5th or whatever. Before that, you had some initial reductions that you guys were talking about.
Well, I think Dan was talking about, he had made some reductions in the May 5th budget from which the original in the department budgets that the managers presented to you. That's what you said? Is that what you're referring to?
I have no idea. Anyways,
No. I'm just, so basically what I'm comparing the May 5th budget, which is, I consider the first draft, and the May 27th budget, which we're looking at tonight. And I went line by line through each department to see which departments were reduced. Police department was reduced by about 100,000. Fire department was reduced by about 11,000. Rec center was reduced by about 55,000. That's about it. So that's all. So I'm comparing those two, thinking we were going to be seeing somewhere in the neighborhood of $500,000. Again, I'm just making sure I understand the math.
Mr. Mayor.
yes, sir. Go ahead.
Okay. Our operational budgets for our departments are already about as low as they can get without sacrificing services or the ability to even be able to operate a department. And so if that is in place, and that is my position for sure, then the only other places that we can cut is salaries. And so we've already cut back the open positions and did a hiring freeze to make up some of the difference. So the only other place to pull from to make up for the amount that you're asking, from my perspective, is from existing positions, which very well could land us in problems in arbitration with our union. If we're cutting back hours, changing hours, laying people off, that's not something that we want to do. And so we've cut what we can, as much as we can. I think that this is a very modest budget based upon inflated costs and the aging of our buildings and our machinery, which have a huge cost associated with them. And so I'm sorry that it's not exactly what you wanted. I wish that we could do better, but I don't think that there is more room there. What does it do? It buys us time. That's all I have.
I wasn't saying I necessarily wanted it. I was just going on what we were told on Friday, that we would look for meaningful cuts to close to $500,000 and that we could do it without any layoffs. That's what was communicated to us. And it sounds like you guys have discovered that maybe that's not possible.
I don't believe it's possible without making cuts to personnel.
Same. I agree.
So the FY '25, the year that we're in January, was it? We made a budget adjustment? Or the council approved the budget adjustment? Was that in January or February? Do you remember?
Nikki, when were the adjustments?
What was the mid-year?
Mid-year adjustments.
We approved that in March.
In March. Okay, so basically less than 2 months ago, or about 2 months ago or so, we made an adjustment to increase the city budget up to $18,791,000. for this fiscal year. And what we're looking at now is basically about $750,000 less for our proposed budget for this fiscal year, right? So basically somehow you found $750,000 that we needed this year, because otherwise we wouldn't have needed a budget amendment. Because otherwise the staff would not have come to the council and say, can you give us some more money? So somehow you found $750,000 from where we are right now to starting in July, we're gonna have $750,000 less. Am I reading that right?
There's a lot of variables that go into a budget, and so like I can't even predict what this year will look like.
Well, I'm gonna predict this to be $18 million.
Well,
So,
I can guarantee that if we have a heavy snow year, that's gonna look a lot different. If we want to remove snow at the same, services that we've been providing in the past. And so we lucked out this year that it was a relatively light year.
So I think it would be fair to say, it was sometime in maybe November or December, we approved a new multi-year contract with our bargaining unit, and made some meaningful changes to it, at least from our perspective, maybe not so much from the employee perspective, but because of the issue of not being able to attract applicants. And so I guess I haven't scrunched the numbers down totally to see what the current year budget for personnel is versus the proposed, to see what that delta is. But, just a cursory look, it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of difference from that. So that, where that savings was made up was from, eliminating either a non-filled position. Because if we had got the original budget, just the draft that here's the wish list, it would have been more than this 18 million. It would have been up considerably. And then looking at, it was a 2.5 million, approximately $2.4 million fund balance appropriation that now is reduced. I guess I missed the thing on how much the sales tax was going to generate.
About 1.6.
Okay,
If they pass it, more.
right.
For half a year.
Mm-hmm.
So just to clarify, that's for 7% seasonal or year-round sales tax. 7%. Have we ever had sales tax that high before?
No, it
5 and
was
7.
4% for a long time, and they
It
added
was 3%.
3%, then they added 2% for,
The 3% was to pay off the bonds on the seawall. Seawall's still there and the tax is still there. The 1% then got added to pay off the elementary school bond. Sales tax is still there. Because I guess unless there had been a firm sunsetting date of those things, they just continue until the next the next time it comes up as an issue. And then, so there we were at 4%, and then we got to the 5 and 7, I believe it was, on the C. We added that 1 year round, and then made it 7 during the half the month or half the year when we had big summer sales and the like. So the sales tax, it was well, you can't dedicate it. It was kind of set out that this is what the intended purpose is.
So the highest we've ever had
Is
for a
7.
year-round sales tax is 5%.
7. Oh, year round. Excuse
Year-round.
me. Yes, is 5.
Yeah, we've had seasons.
Yes.
Okay.
I believe that's correct. Do you agree?
Yes. 7% is on par with what most communities in rural Alaska that are comparable to us are charging.
But don't also have a property tax.
Well, a lot of these other communities, some of them do, and some of them have taxes that we don't have.
or double the current taxes we have. Like looking at that list, Bethel, Kotzebue had double some of our current taxes.
Yeah.
Bed tax was doubled.
Oopsie ugly. I'm sorry if I said that wrong, but church is 10% sales tax.
And we had help with that from AML.
Do they have a property tax?
They they have sales tax and excise tax.
Like liquor tax and
No
other taxes.
Yep.
Some of the sin taxes that you have to send.
So in the current budget, May 27th budget, today's, is there a reduction of hours of any facility? Under this current budget with these, the cuts that are, or the reductions that are made, I think there's like, the rec center is 55,000 less, but they didn't change the hours at all.
Some of the hours where we're still, there would be some hour changes there, the library, the museum. I'm trying to.
But there's no cuts in those departments, there's no reductions in those departments, so I'm assuming there's no, it's just a question, so there's no reduction in hours. Is that right?
Well,
You know,
yeah,
open
there could
hours.
be
you mean?
reductions.
Open hours,
but I
I'm
still
sorry,
have
yeah.
those personnel costs.
Yeah, no, again, I'm not
Yeah.
arguing or debating, there were no cuts or no reductions. There was, well, first of all, there was $55,000 reduction in the rec center budget. And you said, or I think Nikki said that there was like a program coordinator position that is not filled, that was froze or whatever. But people shouldn't expect any reduction in open hours of the rec center. Is that accurate? Under this current budget?
Under how under, how we're operating now with hours, they should
Under
not
the
see.
proposed budget.
And again, it's based on
Okay.
the
And there's,
additional revenue.
and so there's no reduction in open hours for any of the other city facilities, the museum, the library, the visitor center. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
We're maintaining the services
Yeah.
as people
Just
say.
trying to clarify.
As far as I can tell, there's no savings for us closing those facilities down and offering really less hours.
Oh, those
Just
folks are
ask the
part-time.
question. But you did reduce the visitor center budget. Looks like it cut it in half pretty much
Well,
from at least what it
was that
currently
the
is.
100,000
It's,
COC?
there was a note in there that said,
Yeah, that was made, back in March.
but I think in
And that's
previous
still
conversations,
stands.
you said if it's that low, it will probably need to be closed.
At
Is
the, what they're receiving,
Well, even in your revised budget that you submitted today, you still only got 115,000 in there, which is half of what it currently is.
yes.
So you're planning on cutting the visitor center or closing it?
Based on use and based on when they're open and when they're not open, they should be able to survive with that. And that's based on hours, summertime, and when it's not used. When we
So the
don't have
visitors,
that.
and again, I'm just trying to clarify, the visitor center is the only city facility that you are proposing to basically reduce the funding for. Because everything else is pretty much status quo.
I'm not gonna say that's true until I just have to. I can't say that is.
Just asking, because it's basically you cut it in half.
Yes.
So you are planning on closing the visitor center?
No.
And you think that the visitor center can be maintained and operated for half the money that the city currently spends on that?
I believe so. The other is, we've not been approached by them as to the reduction.
Have you reached out?
We've sent it out and I've talked to.
Have you reached out to the visitor center, the executive director?
Chantel,
Yes.
yes, in our meetings,
She's aware.
department manager meetings. We received nothing.
What were those Nicole, was the big snow years, was it during FY 22 or 23?
23.
So
FY 24, we wasn't a big snow year, but we had holding a record amount of snow.
Yeah, for the wind.
And before that was FY 20, I believe.
Is it that line item that covers that is called public works / building maintenance, is that right? Yeah.
So you're talking about the overall budget?
Yeah, for the general fund expenditures, the line item that would cover, including snow removal, would be right under ambulance, public works / building maintenance. I just want to clarify, make sure I look at the right numbers.
Sure.
Is it Public Works Road Maintenance?
Is there a separate public works?
Yeah, further down.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I see, okay, all right, gotcha.
You're
So-
looking at the summary or the summary?
Yeah,
I guess.
summary,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Okay.
I'm just looking, when I was looking at several years back, and then our current year that we're currently in, and comparing it to what the proposed is for this next year. So like that particular public works maintenance in that FY 24 year, I think those big snow years were before this crap, like you said, FY 20 year. Like you said, 24 was pretty bad. That was when you had all the drifting and spent a lot of time. The total budget for road maintenance that year was $2,057,909. The proposed budget, or the budget we're working on this year is 1.9, almost 2 million, 1,993,000. And then the proposed is 2,077,823. So theoretically, and I know it costs more to operate than it did 2 years ago, you know, because all the costs are higher and everything else. But hopefully we have enough in that budget to cover that if we do have that event. I did hear you say something about wanting to put some parts in inventory so that we can not have to wait for them to come in from out of town and
Yes.
if they're available. Is that-
Parts, which is not always a great idea.
I know that's historically, that's been one of the, just like the miners or anybody that's in construction, the downtime is your worst time. And the downtime, when we need it, is when they're waiting on parts, usually they're rebuilding something. So the gamble is a $1.6 million gamble on sales tax.
Sorry, say that again?
I said the gamble is the $1.6 million referendum for the sales tax.
Yes.
That's the gamble.
So I guess based on the reassessment, which it was not a full reassessment, it was just a spot on new building permits and all that. As far as our property tax base, I guess the value of a mill this year versus the value last year, how did that change?
Thank you.
Yeah, that's, so last year, the mill rate was 11.5 on whatever your total valuation was. And I'm just wondering how much that total valuation went up. If we're, well, I guess you can back it into it.
It's a number right here.
Okay.
Yeah, 7.5 million for this year, and the proposed is 8.9 without raising the mill rate. So that would then be the difference in the increased valuations.
Okay.
And,
Mr. Mayor,
1.
Yes.
I show the value of the mill in F25 was approximately $422,000,
Okay.
and the value of a mill in this budget is 487,000, but I don't have changes from BOE yet.
Okay.
Well, how did you go from 7.5 to 8.9 on the proposed property tax collections?
Is that sales tax? It sounds like sales tax.
Oh, I'm looking at the wrong line item. I got you. Okay, so you went from 4.8 to 5.6. That's,
Okay, we're on page 39 then, all right.
yeah, I see. Okay, you went from 4.8 in property tax to 5.6. So that would be based on the increased valuations, right? If we kept the mill rate the same?
And then the BOE adjustments, if any, would be against, it would result in a reduction from that 5.6 number.
Yeah.
I was looking at you. Different question. In the original budget, there was no expenses in the line item for the pool, but in the new budget, it's 84,000. What's the,
That's incorporating the pool back into the budget.
so in the original budget, it was assumed that it would be closed?
Yes,
Is that what this
it was. And it's in the 3.4 for the schools. The remaining amount, they, within their budget, manage the majority of that. So that would keep the pool open.
So the 84,000 is like basically lifeguard salaries and that sort of thing. It's not really calculable, our maintenance staff, what they put into it, what their time is.
So the city pays the staffing and the school pays for everything else? Is that kind of the split?
Heating and janitorial, and maybe Jamie can speak to that more. I'm not sure what else it incorporates.
That's correct.
Is that kind of the split?
Well, quick follow-up question on the pool. Since it got revamped, is your crew, for the maintenance crew, spending less time dealing with it, or are you still spending a lot of time?
We still have to go out there on a regular basis to check the chemical levels. We can monitor it from the office in the morning, but we don't know if numbers are real. It's just what the computer says. So we had somebody going there daily.
To verify.
But not necessarily fixing so much?
Not necessarily fixing, it's more or less putting eyes on it because we can't see the.
Can't, yeah.
We had a period of time where we didn't have somebody going out there and one of the pumps had run out of chemical and the pump kept going and the computer said everything's hunky-dory until it wasn't.
Yeah.
So we do daily checks.
So I guess after the initial public comment that I heard on it was simply based on Councilmember Piscoya's survey that, was asking about the school system. So, don't cut the pool was the big one that came out of there. And to a lesser degree than, the schools need the money. But I guess I'm maybe not in the right circles to hear all of the, comments relative to these other items that are proposed and any of those changes. And I suspect it's going to be one of those things that nobody's really paying attention to this process, but when it comes down to potentially the door's locked, they're gonna wanna know what the heck, why isn't it open? And you point back to this, although, the whole hope and the goal is not to reduce any hours of services. In order to get to a more significant, to another large number to take out of the budget. Because I just don't see how it really can happen without, a reduction in hours. Some places are already running at, at the bare minimum of hours already. But
So under the current budget, worst case scenario, the sales tax increase doesn't pass. Are we still planning on doing that in October? Or did we decide we could do that maybe in July?
We talked about that today. I'm talking to legal counsel. It sounds like October, that in October.
I know there was
Would be
discussion about maybe doing it.
There was, and yeah.
Okay. So in October, if for whatever reason it doesn't pass, how much would we have to withdraw from the city savings accounts?
Well, at that point, we actually will go back and look at departments
Well, according to
again,
the
beyond
budget
what
you
the
submitted,
service
we're
is.
already gonna be almost halfway through. The city's gonna have to cough up another $2.2 million out of the savings account based on this current budget. Because you're considering
Worst case,
1.6.
yes.
1.6 million is gonna come from the 2% increase, and I think we're also withdrawing, is it $500,000?
509,000 or
2.1,
something.
2.2.
But we would go,
Worst case
asking
scenario,
your-
what happens if, what do we do?
we'll have to cut. We'll have to lay people off. We won't have a choice at that point. And right now, to maintain the services that people are still asking for, but at that point, we'll say we can't do it. You have to shut this down, this down, this down.
Will that put our operating cash at risk?
Yes.
Probably told us a few times that what's the big increase in IT department? Why are we spending extra $130,000 from what we're spending this year and traditionally? What do we, how come we're spending so much more on IT?
Those new cameras.
it's a new service contract, is one of them.
That's probably the biggest, is service contract. And Dan, what else did we?
Legally,
Big
They're
one.
both machinery and equipment costs of $123,000.
She's got the
That's the big,
detail.
that's the big one.
Yeah,
One-
that's the
one-
big one.
one of the problems that we had this year was a fiber optic cut, which kind of almost, well, it handicapped us, for lack of better words. It made it so that we couldn't operate half the day as we were trying to work off of a Starlink and some sort of band-aided Frankenstein system, to try to get things working. And one of the problems that we had was with our static IPs being owned by Telalaska. And so anything that required a static IP, we weren't able to access because Telalaska didn't have that capability with the fiber optic cut in place. And so we've been looking for a redundancy on how to fix this issue so that we would be able to operate and take payments and run services like normal, even if there was a fiber cut off of a Starlink that is connected to our system. And so our IT director found an option. It requires us to purchase our own IPs, and it's managed by a third party. But it's a redundancy that leaves us with connectivity no matter what. And as this has been like the fourth time that there's been some sort of an outage on some way, shape, or form, I mean, I know that Quintillion's looking at a plan that might be a year, maybe longer away. This is a real solution that we can enact now to continue to do business. And continue to do business even if there was some sort of emergency that happened, as we had issues with the community emergency that we had in February with also our internet having problems. And yeah, so yes, it has a little bit of additional cost, but there's savings on another way, is that we're not paying for static IPs with Alaska if we're going this route. And maybe it's a little bit preemptive to talk about this before it's even something that's approved, but I think that it's in the best interest of the city to go this way.
So we haven't done that yet, or we have done it.
We're working on it right now.
It's in process.
It's in process. So that it's ready before the next thing happens.
There you go. Let's send that bill to Quintillion.
I guess raising the sales tax. I see that our online sales tax number is being increased and has, is making a contribution to the city revenues, but then, I guess it was the same thing when we used to have the inventory tax, was that we were penalizing the local merchant with that particular tax. And there was, the discussion that, somebody should buy it online because, they can save $30 in sales tax. I don't know that, being sales tax is pretty much universal on, on internet sales and all that they still see that same result. But, it's, I guess, like going to the gas station, $4.99.9 cents, or, even buying grapes, you're going to pay $2.98 a pound. Well, this is all say $3, and maybe we'd understand it better. But I'm just wondering how, for the amount of sales that we have going on here locally and with the small businesses, how while the tax is paid for by the consumer, not the owner, people make their buying choices based on the entire deal. And somebody's going to end up getting hurt in this move. And I guess fear that some of the smaller, businesses, and then some that we want to try to encourage in the future, it just it adds some uncertainty to their able to come up with a business plan that makes sense. Has the chamber talked at all about that? You go to chamber?
No.
Oh, okay.
About an increased sales tax?
Yeah. And we don't need it.
In general,
Yeah.
this is the first time that I think people are realistically talking about a year-round 7% sales tax. I think it was, first time it was brought up was last Friday as a concept. I personally like, you know, the reduction in operating expenses, the reduction in school funding, and a lesser tax increase because it's more risk averse in the event the voters don't approve of this. That's a big if. And it, you know, if we sort of, you know, tighten our belts a little bit right now, ask a little bit less of voters, even if it doesn't pass, we'll have to come up with what, 1.2 million?
Give or take, yeah.
It's not the end of the world, you know. Coming up with $1 million more in the middle of a budget cycle, it's pretty heavy lift. And I'm really concerned that it's like Mark said, we're kind of rolling the dice. On
It is
this.
a roll.
I'm not saying, I hope it does. I mean, if we go down that path, I'm gonna work 100% to make sure that it does pass. But it makes me nervous when we're not really, again, notwithstanding Dan's arguments about we already reduced the expenses before the first draft of the budget ever came out, but there's not much difference here between the May 5th budget and this one. Not much.
There's not a lot, no.
You know, you said you went through it with a sharp pencil and
We did,
got
we
where you
looked.
could. It's like $75,000 difference.
You don't have that much right now without full reduction of services. But even reducing that, for just the example, the library and the museum, you reduce hours, it doesn't save a lot. I mean, it's 4,000 here, 6,000 there. It's not a lot.
I'm just making that point.
Oh, yeah. And if we have to do it now or then, we're gonna have to do it. It just depends on the revenue, and what, you know, what the public wants, what services do they want.
Yeah, right now we have options of selecting which options that we may want to.
Like a minute, yes.
If we wait until October and for whatever reason it doesn't happen, then we don't, our options are much more limited.
I don't think they're as limited as you think.
Can we go back and reverse the budget decisions that we're making, like?
You can go in and cut deeper, but with them knowing, tell everyone, this is going to shut down, this is going, but it's a have to. It would be a requirement
when
at
we
that
don't have a
point without
choice.
cash. That's correct.
And we can't go back and change school funding for sure. I mean, that's.
No,
locked
once
in.
you do that, that's locked in
The only
for
thing we can change is the city's operating budget.
city and any agents we fund outside, anything but schools.
Great. Great.
Yeah, for the most part.
Yeah.
Since Jamie's here, another question for Jamie. Hi. Yeah,
2 more minutes before I have to go to
I-
scholarship night.
all right, we got a couple minutes to answer. If the school is not able to get $3.4 million to make their budget, where would the money come from?
Well, there's a pretty good chance we would pull at least a chunk out of department fund. We've already signed contracts with a lot of our certified folks, and once they're signed, we're legally obligated to them. We could look at doing some hiring freezes. A couple positions that are coming up vacant that we could choose not to fill. I mean, the reality is that, you know, we have been cutting supply budgets and things like that for the past 4 or 5 years. So we get down to the point where all we can cut is people. You know, people are the largest portion of our budget. So that's what it would probably be, some combination of trying to eliminate a position or two. See if we cut our supply budgets down, but I mean, that's not doesn't make a whole lot of dent. You know, what we're talking about, like a $500,000 shortfall or something like that. So we probably pull a good chunk of it out of the apartment fund.
When you speak about a good chunk, what type of money are you talking about?
Well, we currently have budgeted to take $250,000 out of it already in our current budget. You know, and that fund does replenish itself because rent goes back into that fund. The expenses aren't that high. You know, it'd be preferable not to, because we can only, you know, it's just like anything else, we can't take any more money out of our capital fund. You know, the roof's scheduled to start getting ripped off next week, so, you know, we've gotta have money in for that.
How much is
And
in
then,
it?
Yeah, that's the next question.
How much is in it? Is it still 3.3?
So our share, the entire project, the total cost of the project, that's including contingency, anything else is a little over 6 million. And we have to pay 30% of that, which is about 1.8. So that's our participating share of anything the state chooses to fund. We have to pay 30% of the cost.
Okay, but how much is in the fund?
How much is in that fund?
Are you asking about how much is in the apartment fund?
No, the cap fund.
Cap fund.
We're right around 3 million. But, and I said to Lee, we've been spending on average, we spend between $200,000 and $400,000 out of that fund annually. That's not necessarily specifically for a project. Sometimes, you know, we haven't done a whole lot of projects. I mean, the last project that we did was when we did the ACSA restroom remodel. And that was several years ago. So, you know, but this project's starting and we're hoping to be done by August 31st. So money's just gonna go out real quick because we have to pay up front and then ask the state to reimburse us.
How about the apartment fund? How much money is in there?
A little over 2 million.
A little over 2 million. Were you able to have Genevieve put together a balance sheet for those two funds?
I don't have a balance sheet. I just have and I apologize. I sent the email I did email it to Lee, so he does now have a copy of it. It's not like it's a spreadsheet. It shows, shows revenue, expenditures, and balance. For
What I'm interested in is just seeing what the track of that is. You know, was it up to 5 million and now you're down to 2, or or do you fluctuate between 2 and 3? You know, that's what I was kind of looking at year to year to see if you weren't getting 3.4 million and you had to pull for something without taking the stance that Lee is taking, that you don't want to cut staff or any school operations. That's not a goal of cutting the thing, but couldn't you pull some money out of one of your funds to be able to cover that, so you don't have to use the thing of cutting staff? That's basically what you know, we're banking on the voters voting on increasing tax, but also paying $500,000 out of basically a savings account
right, but the reality is that our big concern now is we're waiting because Dunleavy hasn't had his crack at the budget. He has stated that he would at least partially line item veto school funding because he didn't get what he wanted. And I mean, that would be a first because right now statutorily, the $700 was added to the VSA, but he still might do it. And if he does, the reality is that means that, I mean, he could cut it below what we have now. Who knows? The legislature has basically been pretty honest, like they're not coming back into session until January. So we can't even look at a budget override till January, which means that we have to make it in that whatever the shortfall, we have to make it on our own, what our cash is. And so that's another concern that they might restore it in January, they might not. So we could be looking at a lot more than $500,000.
Did I hear you correctly? You said you have 2 million in your
Yeah.
apartment fund? I thought, based on our last work session, it was like 1.1 or maybe.
Yeah, well, Genevieve sent me an updated one
So
earlier
you,
this afternoon.
so you
It's closer to
actually, have 2 million in the apartment fund that we're saving in the event that you can put together a 18-plex project or apartment.
That's kind of what it's for right now. I always have to keep something in there. It's reserves, just like any apartment owner in town. You know, you gotta keep money in there in reserves for like larger expenses, which is, you know.
Yeah, no, that's good. I had thought there was 1.1, but thanks for.
Yeah, so it is a little higher than I had initially recalled.
Sure.
So like I said, but, still, that means that, if we're already slated to take out a quarter, and then if the city cuts by half, that's
And
that's $750,000 that has to come out of that, leaving us just about, about 1.2 in there. And if we get any further cuts, like I said, we got to figure out how to make it on our cash flow.
And what date does Nome Public Schools have to have its final budget submitted to the state? It's July
July
15th, or July 1, or July 15th.
Yeah, so typically, May 31st is when the
So
city,
even and we talked about this last work
Right.
session, but thank you for attending in person.
Yep.
Even if Dunleavy does something to reduce Nome Public Schools' budget, we could always come back and add more after May 31st, which is when our deadline is. We could always add more to your budget or to your contribution to offset that, correct? There's nothing to stop us from doing that. I just want to make sure I understand the process.
yeah, I
the
mean,
date, So we can come back.
you could do, you have to get the minimum. And they could do anything between then
Well, we
and
could
then.
add more,
Come
we
back
just
later
can't
and say,
reduce.
hey, we changed our
Sure.
mind, we're gonna give you more money, that's happened a little bit in the past, like when they, when we used to do the NSATC and we would write the grant, that actually all goes against the appropriation.
What typically causes a budget surplus for Nome Public Schools? Is it attendance being higher than you initially expected it to be when the budget was drafted, or how do you get an operating surplus? I'm just curious.
We don't, I think the only time we really had a significant surplus was when we were going through COVID.
2023, I think, was when last time we talked.
Yeah, well,
I'm just curious, what would cause that?
Yeah, well, and it's a lot of things. I mean, like I said, a budget's always a projection, and then we kind of get to the end of the year, we kind of true up. We've had issues with our international teachers arriving, later than we had originally budgeted. It's not a full savings for that, because typically what we have to do is we have to compensate other staff that are stepping up and trying to cover things until they get there. But yeah, I mean, if you budget to pay a teacher for all year and then they come 2 months late, so those kinds of things, which we don't really like, they don't do anything good for kids. So, and we just kind of got to see how everything, we also budget, we have to make a projection when our staff come in. I mean, what are they going to choose, like their healthcare coverage? A single person, obviously, though, it's going to be less expensive than somebody that comes with a family, but we never know what we're going to get.
Thanks.
The date thing, remind me again what the May 31st thing is.
Yeah, that's when the city has to tell us what our appropriation is, because we need time, if there's change, to adjust our budget, which would happen in our June 10th board meeting. We'd have to approve an adjusted budget.
Per city ordinance, or what mandates that? That's May 31st or per state? Okay, per state, we need to give you an answer by May 31st.
Correct.
No matter what we do in June, we gotta give something to answer by May 31st.
If it's not given within the 30 days, what they put in their budget becomes the contribution automatically.
Yeah, so we don't, if we don't make a decision tonight or before May 31st, then then $3.4 million, which is what they requested, will automatically be the contribution without us voting on it. So, and the only point I've been making is, if we vote on something tonight, we still have the ability to increase it at a later date between now and June 30th.
Or October.
Or anytime.
Or anytime.
Or anytime.
Hey,
December 1st.
Everybody say a date.
All right, we are out of time for this part of our agenda tonight. And when's the next time we're taking this up, and what's the course of action? I don't have the budget calendar here, I guess is what I'm saying.
Right now, well, tonight would be a first reading, obviously you can change after a first reading, that's what it is. And
Right.
then second reading,
June 9th.
June 9th.
But we're in a little bit of a quagmire there. Because we have to decide on if we're keeping the $3.4 million in the school budget or not, as part of our budget. And if we
So I guess based on, yeah, I guess, I mean, because there is a resolution on the calendar here, very last thing. And so, those numbers, you know, it's just two changes. It would be in the, you know, what was the total, well, I guess, what is the total contribution, and then what is the, not arbitrary, but what is the person that's not mandated to the school. Still talking just about the school, the additional contribution. Change that. And then, yeah, the mill rate as well.
Those are the two things we have to decide tonight, the contribution to the schools and the mill rate.
well, the mill rate is first reading.
It's first reading,
Yeah,
first
right,
reading.
mill rate.
Well,
Right,
correction, it's a resolution, so it's only on reading.
Oh, yeah, so we'd be,
I was right.
you were right.
Yeah.
So we'd be making that decision if we pass that tonight. Keep the mill rate at what it is.
Right.
Is there a statutory deadline for the mill rate? I thought there was, it was earlier than. For some reason.
I'm pretty sure it's in the statute, but,
I thought it was May 31st for some reason.
but I guess
Because that's
where
what
it
school
does,
contribution amounts are based on.
Prior to June 1st, there is no book.
it's just from a logistical point that, you know, the closer it gets to the deadline, the more air game we'll lose, so.
Because I thought we talked about this like last year.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, yes, Nikki, please.
June 15th.
June 15th.
So
And do we have a council meeting?
June
June 9th.
9th.
So we don't necessarily have to decide the mill rate tonight, because it's a resolution that only requires one reading. We could, if we had to, and I'm not suggesting we do, we could punt that or delay it until the next council meeting, correct? If anybody wanted to.
Well,
As I understand it, you could, but that's up to you.
it, I guess, we're talking about increasing the sales tax significantly and leaving the property tax rate the same, I guess. And I just feel people will have a problem with a 2% increase. And so is there some way to take both of these together? And that, you know, I know that it seems to be at one point in time, the number of 13 mills was being floated around somewhere.
So you missed a couple work sessions there, Mr. Mayor.
Right, I did, yeah.
And in
I've
that,
had reason.
no, I'm not saying that. Yeah, but in that, we heard quite a bit of feedback from people talking about trying not to raise the mill rate because of the escalation of property values over the last several years.
Okay.
And alternatively, a sales tax increase.
Mhm.
But at the time, it was proposed 6%. So it's right.
That's correct. But then we had a mix of mill plus sales tax. And, you know, it became pretty apparent everywhere I've gone when they go, now, wow, talk about sales tax, but don't touch on property tax.
Okay.
They would say it wasn't fair. People had said, even in this room, that they did not feel that it was equitable, that everyone paid sales tax, but everyone did not pay property tax.
Well, I guess, and I mean, this is just my perspective on it. And I'm not saying this to sway anybody one way or another, but it seems like, because we have year in, year out taken out of our piggy bank, that we have kept the mill rate lower than it should have been to pay for the services that we've enjoyed. So we were, if we were to have paid for everything and not had money in savings to be able to supplement it, our mill rate would have been considerably higher for years. And
The mill rate was cut, Dan, what was the last big?
It was at 12, and then that was reduced to 10.5, and then last year was.
And then
increased
last
to
11.
That was current.
okay.
Appreciate paying a lawyer on the phone for the BOE going on. We should be doing right now.
Well, he's a hospital lawyer.
Yeah, there.
Yeah, we can debate this.
We gotta debate it.
Yeah, we got to
Pretty
debate
soon,
it.
so.
No, it's good. 5 minutes.
There's a whole bunch of crap on our agenda here.
5 minutes.
Yes, we're gonna take a 5-minute break now. You didn't get my son over there in Italy, Adam, or
I did.
flying? roll on the attendance for the Nome Common Council meeting for Tuesday, May 27, 2025.
Councilmember Henderson. Here. Councilmember Johnson.
Here.
Councilmember Martinson.
Here.
Councilmember Green.
Here.
Councilmember Miller.
Here.
Councilmember Piscoya.
Here.
Thank you. We've got everybody. Wonderful. Quorum established. Moving on to the approval agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make that motion. I'll second.
Councilmember Piscoya, Councilmember Green. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Johnson.
Yeah.
Councilmember Martinson.
Yes.
Councilmember Green.
Yes.
Councilmember Miller.
Yes.
Councilmember Piscoya.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson.
Yes. Thank you. The agenda is approved. This time, the council will recess to the Board of Equalization to deal with matters remaining open from 2025 appeals. So calling the Board of Equalization to order, and we'll use the same roll that we had before. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 North Sound properties. North Sound is the only one on the docket this evening. And board draft draft form prepared by the Assessors Council for each of these properties. And that was submitted to the board for review. The board now must make a decision on how to proceed with the actual appeals. We did have the recommendation or the basis for the determination by the assessor. And so we either accept the assessor's position or we do otherwise. The proper motion to deal with this is in the affirmative. So the motion will be to grant the appeal and that in favor of upholding the assessor's determinations on the parcels, and that the members then have determined or must determine whether there are any errors in the exception determination, and staff has not found that, nor has council. So I'm going to list off the different properties as well as the tax lot numbers, so it's abundantly clear. And we can take these individually, or the assessor's memorandum was all encompassing, took them all, so it might be more expedient to take it as a block. Is there any objection to doing that?
What does the assessor recommend? Is there any reason to do them individually?
There is not, and we do have, we're actually represented by council this evening. Pam Weiss with Gus and Rudd is on the line, and she is here primarily to ensure that we're following proper protocol, and not that we're asking her for any legal advice on a proposed course of action. So we're not asking her on the merits of the case or anything.
So let's ask her.
Okay. So ask her what?
If we should do it as a block. Or
Oh.
individually. That was kind of my question.
I see. Okay. We can do it as a block. Do you see any, Pam, good to meet you. Do you have any reason why it should be done one way or another?
To the extent you would have different factual findings or conclusions of law with respect to an individual parcel, then you would want to do them each separately. If those conclusions are largely the same for every property, every parcel, I think you can do them as a block. You just want to make sure that your record is clear at the end if there are differences for any of the properties.
Okay, thank you. So in that memorandum, I mean, at the last BOE building meeting, we did block or put together a couple that were similar properties if they were residential, et cetera. But it'll only take us another minute or two to do them individually. So first one to call up is Norton Sound Health Corporation 7-plex located on block 91, lot 3 and 4, commonly known as the Lawyer Apartment Complex. It's tax lot 001.221.05A. Is there a motion to grant this appeal?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Thank you. Member Henderson, Member Johnson. And the assessor has concluded and recommended and provided facts to not grant the appeal. So, but it's up to the board. So, if we could have a roll call, please, on whether to grant the appeal for this tax lot for the 7-plex.
Are there any?
Are there any questions or comments on it? Okay,
Mr. Mayor,
please.
I declared a conflict of interest.
You should not participate, but you don't need to leave the room.
Great.
You. Thank you for that.
Yep.
Just under comments, just for clarification, the motion is to grant the appeal.
Correct.
So when we vote, if we want to vote to grant the appeal, we vote yes. If we desire to not grant the appeal, we vote no.
If you wish to accept the assessor's recommendation, you would vote no.
Roll call. Councilmember Henderson? No. Councilmember Johnson?
No.
Councilmember Martinson?
no.
Councilmember Green?
No.
Councilmember Miller?
Okay, that motion fails. Moving on to NSHC 20 or the 20-plex on block, which is a mineral survey number 1298. It's tax lot 192.1.085. 20-plex being on Greg Kushek Avenue adjacent to the hospital. Is there a motion to grant the appeal?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Member Henderson, Member Johnson. And is there any discussion? Not, roll call, please.
Roll call. Councilmember Johnson?
No.
Councilmember Martinson?
No.
Councilmember Green?
No.
Councilmember Miller?
No.
Councilmember Henderson?
No.
Thank you. The appeal is not granted. Moving on to NSHC Nome Duplex, a property or on block 118 of lot 7, tax lot 001.118.07. Is there a motion to grant the appeal?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Member Henderson, Member Johnson, is there any discussion? A roll call, please.
Councilmember Martinson?
No.
Councilmember Green?
No.
Councilmember Miller?
No.
Councilmember Henderson?
No.
Councilmember Johnson?
No.
Thank you. That appeal is not granted. The next appeal is for the Kuski House, located down on around 3rd and K Street, block 33, lot 19, and it's tax lot 001.131.01A. Is there a motion to grant this appeal?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Member Henderson, Member Johnson, is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Green?
No.
Councilmember Miller?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
No.
Councilmember Johnson?
No.
Councilmember Martinson?
No.
Thank you. The appeal is not granted. The next parcel is all of Block 116, which has the main hostel, the wellness center, and the operations building located on them. This is all Lot 1A in Block 116, and it's tax lot 001.115.01. Is there a motion to grant the appeal on the subject property?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Thank you. Member Johnson, Member Henderson. Is any discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Green,
No.
Councilmember Miller,
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson. No. Councilmember Johnson,
No?
Councilmember Martin.
No.
Thank you. The appeal is not granted. The next parcel is the prematernal home and patient hostel west. This is behind the main old hospital and on Block 110, Lot 1 and 2, tax lot 001.211.03A. Is there a motion to grant the appeal?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Member Johnson, Member Henderson, is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Miller,
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson. No. Councilmember Johnson,
No?
Councilmember Martin,
No.
Councilmember Green.
No.
Thank you. That appeal is not granted. NSCC Hat Building, Health Aid Training Building located on Block 110, Lot 3A. It's tax lot 001.211.03B. Is there a motion to grant this appeal?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Councilmember Johnson and Member Henderson. Is there any discussion?
This is the building that is potentially under construction, correct?
This is the building, I believe, and we can look it up, where the PHS office, Public Health Nursing was before they moved down to the old eye clinic. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Henderson. No. Councilmember Johnson,
No?
Councilmember Martin,
No.
Councilmember Green,
No.
Councilmember Miller.
No.
And the final one is the West Campus property, which is Block 127, Lot 7A, and that's tax lot 001.201.05. Is there a motion to grant that appeal?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Member Johnson, Member Henderson, is there any discussion? A roll call, please.
Councilmember Johnson,
No?
Councilmember Martin,
No.
Councilmember Green,
No.
Councilmember Miller,
No.
Councilmember Henderson. No.
Thank you. That appeal is not granted. So I guess I should have said this at the beginning, but that in this action for the appeal not granted, by reference, the board would be accepting the findings of fact and conclusions of the law that are contained in the assessor's memorandum denying the exemption application for the subject parcels. Is that understood? Okay.
Mr. Mayor, did you miss the hat building? Or was I, is it?
Got it.
No, we talked, that was the one that Councilmember Miller asked the question, what is it? So, all right, with that, Ms. Weiss, is there anything that we have missed procedurally that you would recommend we take care of here before we adjourn?
I think if the intention is to issue any sort of final written decision, that should be stated on the record, and if the findings of fact and conclusions of law are, as you said, to adopt, for those who voted no, for the remaining parcels that you did vote on, if that is your intention, to state that on the record as well, so that we can make sure that a written decision reflects accurately the findings of this board.
Okay, so I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll of the members here to give.
Just one quick question, I'm sorry. I noticed that Councilmember Sequoia stepped out of the voting because he works for Norton Sound Health Corporation. But so does Councilmember Miller, to my knowledge.
She works for Coera.
I work for Norton Sound,
Oh, you
but
do?
under our code, I don't work
Oh,
in
yeah, she
decision-making
does not
factors.
follow under the 3 different deals that are required for a conflict of interest. So,
Thank you.
yep. All right, so you heard the attorney, and it was that we would be adopting the assessor's findings as our conclusions of law and finding of fact. I did not state that before that in the reading off of the parcels. I'd ask the clerk to call the roll of each member to ensure that that is your understanding and decision.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
could we do that by motion possibly?
we could do it by motion and then do the roll call,
Yeah.
but that's fine.
Procedurally?
That's fine. We can do it. That's fine.
And I think I just want to make sure that it's clear for the record, so that if there's a written decision, that it accurately reflects what the intention of the board is. I don't know that you need to have a roll call, certainly for not each parcel, but to make, because you're going to get a different answer for those assembly people who voted yes on those motions. I would assume then they would not adopt it. I just want to clarify for the record that that's the intention of the board, to adopt that for anyone who voted no on all the parcels.
Yeah, we're not going to do it 8 times again. One motion, and so is there a motion then to confirm the determination of the board against granting the appeal and in favor of upholding the assessor's determination on each one that are subject is indeed the board's decision?
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
Okay, member Henderson, member Johnson, is there any discussion? Roll call. Oh, I'm sorry.
So a yes vote means that we understand.
That you understand and that we are
We
accepting.
deny Norton Sound's appeal.
Correct. And then we're going to issue findings based on the
Thank you.
document. Okay, roll call, I think.
Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Martinson.
Yes.
Councilmember Green.
Yes.
Councilmember Miller.
Yes.
Thank you. So those findings are adopted as the board's conclusions. That it completes the word of the BOE for this year. And so I'm going to adjourn the 2025 Board of Equalization, City of Nome. We will return to the regular council agenda now, and we are now at approval of minutes. We have 3 sets of minutes, 2 from BOE from April 30th and May 14th, as well as Common Council regular meeting on the 20th of May. Is there a motion to adopt these minutes?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Thank you. Councilmember Martinson, Councilmember Green, is there any discussion? A roll call, please.
Councilmember Martinson.
Yes.
Councilmember Green.
Yes.
Councilmember Miller.
Yes.
Councilmember Priscoya.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson.
Yes.
Thank you. Those are adopted. Moving on to communications, we have one, and that starts at page 15 through 20 of your packet, which are cool handwritten letters from students in the 4th grade thanking the museum for their invitation. And I didn't notice any of them writing in cursive, but their writing is quite clear. So that's nice of them to send that. Thank you. So moving on then to citizens' comments. Are there members of the audience that would like, or the community that would like to address the council this evening? If so, please come to the podium, state your name for the record.
Stephen Longley.
Tonight, we are going to put a 3-minute limit on it.
Okay, I was blooded. I was just kind of wondering about this hospital. Why aren't they allowed to be tax exempt? I mean, I can understand the housing for the employees not being tax exempt, but they act like the wellness center. They serve patients there, and the hostels, they house patients there. Is the city getting away from tax exempt? So are we going to be doing away with like the churches, making them taxable now too, along like the radio stations and all the other tax exempt entities?
So how about if we copy you the decision information, then I'll be happy to give you the electronic file of the applications. That's 1,500 pages long, and I'll let you make your own determination.
I just want a simple answer.
Right. No, I mean, the properties were individually reviewed based on their use, and the city has one position as to what the exemption definition is. Norton Sound has some different ones, pulling in many legal concepts, not just state but federal.
Okay.
We are in court with them on prior cases from last couple of years, and without decisions on those, we're not changing.
I'll take your word on that.
Yeah.
But now, why isn't there something on here about the taxes? You guys gave Checker Cab 90 days. That 90 days is up and expired. Are you guys going to be doing anything? I've had an agreement with, to shut down for a couple weeks. I shut down for a month. I plan on shutting down all summer because it's summertime and I enjoy my summer. So I'm not going to be doing anything until September. But you guys need to figure out what you're doing as far as taxes. Either out of September when school starts. My daughter's joining volleyball this year, so I'm going to have to do twice as much fundraising. If you guys don't get something done by then, we're going to be right back at square one.
Well, we hope we're not back where we were before, but I think that right now the amount of revenue, whether we keep licenses for taxis in or don't, is 0.000 something decimals on the thing. And as we're looking for a couple $1 million, the issue will come back up, but it's not just not coming up during the month of May or June.
Kind of what I figured. You have a bunch of other stuff that's more important, like the school budget and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But
so we do need to push that, but your comments were taken, and we appreciate the fact that you voluntarily suspended the operation while we try to sort out a happy medium for everybody.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, Steve. Classmate. Are there others?
Good evening, Kate Osborne. When it comes to district spending by the school, I think one of the ways the school district can reduce spending for themselves is by cutting the contract with Nome Management System or Services. Sorry. That has been one of the biggest bleeds for their funding, in my opinion. Nome Management Services has barely been able to provide the most basic of services to the school district over the years. From when I worked there for 5.5 years, from what I saw, they weren't even able to clear snow and ice from fire exits and stairwells. The principals were doing that at the elementary school. Krennic Johnson was doing that herself to keep the exits up to fire code. Children that were wheelchair bound, that we can get them out during fire drills. Nana couldn't do that. In the kitchens, they were so short-staffed at times that the office staff had to step in often. At times, some of the food looked so bad. The kids wouldn't eat it because it looked like dog food. Literally. It looked like Alpo. I don't know how long it's been since anybody was actually satisfied with the nutrition program that the school has been able to provide through its NANA contract. And I know that recent discussions over the budget with the school district was brought up with Jamie Burgess, and she was unwilling to discuss the contract with NMS. And that is just something that's suspicious. Why won't she discuss it? What's she holding back? What is she hiding? How much is the school spending on its contract with NMS versus hiring direct like it used to when it was part of BSSD?
I'm sorry, what was that last part?
When Nome School District wasn't Nome School District, it was BSSD back in the day.
No.
Yes, it was.
No, this is Nome City School District, and Barron Strait School District is the rural education attendance area for our area. Nome has never been part of that, and Linda Conley would cringe if I didn't bring that correction up.
That I have a different knowledge base on that. Okay. So, but anyway, the nutrition program in the maintenance department used to be school hired. Used to be district hired. And it was much better when it was district hired. It was staffed well. I remember as a child, we were fed well. The food was good. We had good maintenance workers. The school was kept up in better repair. We didn't have to outsource contracts to repair our fences and overspend on that, like the last debacle that happened. I don't think I need to remind any of the parents in the room. Ever since NMS came onto the scene, it has systemically pushed all school district hired unionized staff out of the picture. And when I was union president, that happened under me too. Now, if there was a conflict between a NANA manager and a school district employee, the school district employee was to go to their school district supervisor administrator, whether that be a principal or Jamie Burgess herself. One of the conflicts that I had to deal with, Jamie refused to address the situation. And that staff person ended up being so frustrated that they left. And eventually the support staff union dwindled down so much that there is no support staff union anymore. So I'm sorry, Councilman Miller, is there something more important?
Well, I am going to say it sounds like perhaps there are some grievances that you have with the superintendent, and I think you alluded to those at the past one. I might suggest to you that the proper place for you to bring these things up would be at the school, to the school board, who manage that process. And so, that's where we're going to go if we ask some questions. So just food for thought.
Well, this is food for thought, and this is good food for thought for the council, because if we're going to shore up the accounts of the school district and they're wasting money on a contract that's junk and it's bleeding money from their funding, and we're having to make up for that, that's food for thought. So with only one union to work with, to negotiate with, well, that's money saved right there. As for tax increases, I think that the parents who want to save the school district, I think you're going to get the vote there. Hopefully there our census for the area has more parents on it than single people. But I think it is there for our community. So, and the last thing I wanted to bring up is Chamber of Commerce. Is to my recollection, it was shut down during Iditarod. It was closed during Iditarod, or at least the majority of Iditarod.
What was closed, the chamber?
No, the visitor center. Pretty sure it was.
I only went to it a handful of times, but I was able to send guests there, so I don't know what their hours were, but.
Well, that's something to surely keep under consideration. During our highest volume tourism times, it should definitely be open if we're going to serve, if that's its main purpose. There was a question brought up recently, or at least in the last month, on what is the theme of the Midnight Sun Parade. And I brought it, I tagged Chantel in on that question on Nome Post. And there was just, a bunch of, the Chamber of Commerce and the Visitor Center only facilitates things in this way. And historically in the past, community member took this up, and, in the past it was Bridie Green. Well, it's like, we knew Bridie was stepping out of the role. We knew that she was leaving. We know she's not coming back. We know nobody else has stepped up. So we need to figure something out from now on. Now, who's going to step up into the role? And I think it should be the Chamber of Commerce. And, can we get them to make a subcommittee for these annual city events that happen every year, so that there is less confusion and more guidance, so that when there are community members and that want to be involved and, make things happen, that there is
just people to go to and say, oh, hey, you want to be involved? Yeah, talk to this person who's on the council or whoever, instead of, just this kind of like vague non-answer to people's questions. So that is all. Thank you for your time.
Right, moving on then to unfinished business, we have ordinance 25-06-01.
Excuse me?
Clerk, would you please read the roll?
We have more.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
All right.
I'll keep it as short as I can. So I tuned in to a replay of the original,
Oh, please say your name.
oh, sorry. Ken Hughes, resident of Nome, also chair of your Nome Planning Commission. So anyway, I tuned into your Board of Equalization hearing back one of the original ones when you had Mr. Potter on the phone, and he was talking about not wanting to pay the full deal for his lots down there because they were only zoned open space versus general use, such as his other one had. So the lot upon which his residence was built was zoned general at a time when the Planning Commission was generally looking at changing zones, changing some of the property lines in the zones. And the intention was to make sure that all of the private property was in the general use zone, and so that only public property would be zoned open space and recreation. So that way the city wouldn't be necessarily accused of taking over other people's property and in a manner that kind of precludes almost all use. The intention of the Planning Commission was to have not just his lot, but those 3 other lots as well that were all private property become general at the same time his house was. But for some reason that I'm not entirely sure, when the final thing came back from staff, they weren't included. And we never really got a great answer why. I'm not sure what a review of the minutes would look like, but I hope that we can address this issue in an upcoming review of the same thing that the Planning Commission is planning on doing. Okay, similarly, one of the lots on Mineral Survey 2318, immediately west of the Rocker Gulch #1, where Swanberg Dredge is kind of located at, is also what we consider to be zoned as open space and recreation, because it was, again, a private holding and not part of the city's Rocker Creek #1 claim, upon which so there's a second parcel in there, but it's immediately associated with the Swanberg Dredge. Okay, so that's zones down on that end. Speaking of zones, so there's been a lot of to-do lately about the core application that Northwest Diggers has put in for their project over on Queens Bench. If you look at the zoning map, and if you look at their activity map, you can see that all of the mining, which is where material is moved, processed, some of it is put back, all of that activity is occurring in natural resource extraction areas. The industrial zone area is being used as there's a big pond there, and they plan on filling it, and they own it, and all they're doing is filling it. They can't get a fill permit from the city until after their core application goes through. So I'm not seeing any problem with their permit from the Corps as it stands. It does not impose simply be building a pad in the industrial area or an emergent wetlands, perhaps. Now, as president of the Alaska Miners Association Nome branch, I think it's a great project. I think Nome needs more small mines. One of the unfortunate drawbacks of mining is we do own the land and it can get a little bit dusty. And that we recognize that that is a problem that the city has to contend with, that they put an effort forth. And I do see some other mining outfits taking advantage of the sunshine to put some water down to help quell the dust in some of their activities, some of the gravel mines. So that's fantastic. Okay. Also tonight in your packet, as well as all of the other stuff, you have an ordinance that the Planning Commission has been working on for the last year that changes the descriptors and creates a couple of new zones, the core downtown use zone, the downtown use zone, and basically it does two things. It removes in the core area, it removes both the side and the front setbacks to the right of way. And just the downtown use, it removes the setbacks only from the right of way, but keeps the side setbacks. And then there's been a couple other tweaks also to expand a couple of the uses within the matrix, so that within those two zones, we should be able to experience more freedom of use than we would get if the ordinance is not passed. As president of the Chamber of Commerce, I would say that if you don't invest a little bit into tourism and growth, we won't grow. I would hope that it won't be too late to adjust a line item for the visitor center contract, and I'm sure we can show that we do a good job there and what we do with the funds that we get. But that being said, I don't think that 2% sales tax increase is going to be very palatable for the members of the Chamber of Commerce. I know personally, in my experience as a merchant, give me low sales tax so I can, because it impacts how much I can move in non-essential items, things that can be waited upon, durable goods that might be pricey, that waiting for or planning ahead and ordering it from a taxless jurisdiction means I can't stock them here, can't have them ready to go, I can't keep people's production going because I can stock an inventory of parts instead. Okay, so point being, I'd rather see a little more taken out of savings to make up that balance. I take the 1%. I think that expecting both parties to cut $500,000 out of their budget is a reasonable ask if you're going to ask for the sales tax increase. One of the things that the sales tax increase that will impact will be the pull tabs tax, where currently the city taxes the sale of pull tabs based on the gross value rather than the net value. For those councilmen who aren't aware, Nome is one of two cities, Juneau and Nome, that tax pull tabs based on that. At a 2% increase, even we experienced with the seasonal sales tax, our experience was that when we sell a box of pull tabs, the city gets 2/3 of it and we get 1/3. That was our experience under the 7% seasonal sales tax. Was it 7 or was it 6? Anyway, whatever it was, under the seasonal one. So it really cuts down on on that. A change in, if you're gonna be experiencing and going to a higher sales tax number, you might look at perhaps doing something for the nonprofits on that side to gain their support or keep their support. Other than that, I would say that generally speaking, what most people care about is that their hard-earned tax money is well spent, because we dug through the budgets and we took a hard look at what we do. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Walker?
I'm Troy Walker. I just like to mention that before the port construction starts going on, without the yield signs or anything going on, with the shore ice coming through, and put a provisional to, if this starts to lagoon up, it's just one of my things. I kind of like getting kind of conspiracy theoretical, I guess you could make up a word like that, that it would lagoon all the way over to like St. Michael and everything, because the current's just going to come right through and then it's going to split if that goes through. So since there's shore ice right there, build a bridge right up over there, because you ain't going to need that, because that's the only reason why you have that rock right there is for that. So just make sure that your provisional and stuff starts going like that, just take it up.
Super, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, you get a chance here in about 5 minutes. Moving on to unfinished business, Mr. Clerk, will you read ordinance 25-0601 by title?
Ordinance 25-06-01, an ordinance amending the zoning map, amending Title 18 of the Nome Code of Ordinances with the new chapter 18.62, downtown mixed use district. A new chapter 18.66, downtown core mixed use district, and amendments to sections 18.110.010 and 18.30.010.
Thank you. So this ordinance is in first reading, although it's called unfinished business because it showed up on the agenda once before. Is there a motion to pass this ordinance on to second reading, public hearing, and final passage?
Second.
Councilmember Green, Councilmember Martinson, any discussion? Planning Commission has a public hearing at some point in time, or already had it? Already had it? Okay. All right, but copies of the maps are available in the city clerk's office. If there's no discussion on this, roll call please on advancing the ordinance.
Councilmember Green.
Yes.
Councilmember Miller.
Yes.
Councilmember Escobedo.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson. Councilmember Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Martinson.
Yes.
Thank you. That ordinance will be at second reading at the next meeting. Moving on to new business, item A, under there is fiscal year 2026 general fund overview. A simple two-pager there with the revenues and, if I'm remembering the right page, and the department level expenditures.
Page 39.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Yes. So that's given a comparative of from fiscal year 22 through the current fiscal year 24 proposed budget. In this budget overview, there is a balanced budget on the thing with no planned appropriation of fund balance. The various budgets of the city then go into the depth and breadth of these spending and revenue generation items. And they are contained in items B through H of our agenda this evening. All of these ordinances are in first reading for passing on. Is there any objection to taking these as a block? Hearing no objection, Mr. Clerk, would you start with reading item B and continuing through H by title?
So, hold on there.
Yeah, I do have an objection.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to at least take the general fund budget separately.
Okay, we can, all right, we can do that.
I agree with that.
Okay. All right, just read that one then.
Ordinance 25-06-02, an ordinance to establish, approve, and adopt the FY 2026 City of Nome General Fund Municipal Budget and exercising the power to assess and authorize the levy of a general property tax.
Thank you. So is there a motion to pass ordinance 25-06-02 on a second reading at the next meeting?
I'll make the motion.
Councilman Green, Councilman
Second.
Martinson, all right, thank you. Discussion?
Under discussion, right?
Yes.
Yeah. In the, one of the largest items is the contribution to the school within the departmental funds. And under non-departmental funds, it has $3.4 million in the proposed budget. Also part of this budget is the appropriation of $500,000 of savings that the city has in a school bond fund that we're choosing to dip into in order to make this budget match, and also a presumption that we've increased sales tax on this budget to 7%. That's something we can talk about and debate later whether we're going to do that. We don't have to make that decision today, but we have to pass a budget and also give the school their funds. At previous meetings we've had, and first of all, the city council, I don't think anybody on the city council does not support the school. That's a given, that everybody supports the school. The question is how to come up with the money in order to make the city budget work and also make the school budget work. In past meetings, we understood, one of the things that was discussed with the school superintendent is the potential of using some of their savings funds for meeting their budget, not to cut their budget, not to cut any staff, not to cut any supplies, just to make their budget of using their savings similar to what the city is doing. And we understood that they had $1.1 million in an apartment fund, of which they were already choosing to dip to it for $250,000 into out of their 1.1, which would take it down to 850,000.
But now we found out they have 100.
And now we find out that they, instead of having $1.1 million in that savings account, which is for a purpose, but they have an increased amount than what they initially intend to $2 million. It's an extra $900,000. So I think that it's fair for the school on this initial contribution to the school to consider at least matching the city's $500,000 that we're taking out of our savings, utilizing that additional money that they have in their apartment fund. And like we said before, if the school's under the city, and if the school is ever in dire need, of course, we would not want to have things, have staff cut or to have supplies not provided or education not provided. And the city would find ways on going to their savings further if there's an emergency to do that. But and the only reason we have to discuss it either tonight or we have to have another meeting is because we need to let the school know of what we're going to contribute 31st prior to our second reading on this budget. So under discussion, that's something to consider.
And whatever we vote on now is what we have to give them. And if we don't vote on the whole 3.4, we can go back and vote onto it. If he does do a veto on the budget.
You can always give them more. And if we propose the 7% sales tax that the staff is suggesting, and that we talked about it at the previous work session, and if it passes, then we potentially might, well, right now it's a balanced budget. We're not going to have a lot of extra money out of that, but
If we need to, we can withdraw more from our savings if something really bad happens for them.
So typically we don't do amendments at first reading. But if there was some other action taken by these resolutions, then the budget in second reading would carry the recommendation to, or the requirement, I guess, to match it to what we had actually done. So
that makes sense, because a lot of times budgets are adjusted by the time you go to second reading.
Right.
And that's the final passage.
Yeah.
If we pass it tonight as is, it's not necessarily a final passage. We can make amendments to it.
Yeah, all we're doing is moving it to the next meeting. To the next reading, the second reading that's required. And so, those, conceptually, if there are numbers, it's good to be able to provide that to staff so that that can be included in the finance director's review and recommendation. And both of these documents don't need to be 100% aligned tonight, the resolution versus the budget. Because those two resolutions are actually coming after any other of this activity here. So we, we're acting on the resolution setting the thing as a contribution and a mill rate after these other items have been moved to second reading.
So what are you asking, Mark?
So
we
we just
modify the second reading?
Now that John points it out, that's a good, procedurally, we amend it on this, normally amend it on the second reading. Right. It's just a consideration, we discuss it now prior to getting to another resolution that's further down in the agenda.
Right.
I'm not happy with the budget either. I think, but if this is simply a procedural issue, and it's not going to affect the school contribution, it probably does make sense to pass it into second reading, as long as staff is aware of the concerns that the council has at this point, and I have a number of concerns. Because if we don't pass it in the first reading, kind of dead in the water.
Yeah, and then, if there are, we may want to consider having another work session in there as opposed to having.
Before second reading?
Yeah, before, rather than, I'm just thinking that as ideas or concepts come up.
Instead of hanging it up here, that's probably makes sense. I don't want to ask anybody else.
It's not everybody.
Okay, so the roll call, please, or was there anything further at this point? No? All right, a roll call, please, on passing this on to second reading.
Okay.
Thank you.
Roll call. Councilmember Miller.
Yes.
Councilmember Piscoe.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Martin.
Yes.
Councilmember Green.
Yes. Okay, so that leaves us items C through 8 that are budget related. And again, I propose these be packaged. Is there any objection?
Hearing none, Mr. Clerk, would you start with reading item C and read through item H by title? Read it.
Ordinance 25-06-03, an ordinance to establish, approve, and adopt the FY 2026 City of Nome School Debt Service Fund Budget. Ordinance 25-06-04, ordinance to establish, approve, and adopt the FY 26 City of Nome Special Revenue Fund Budget. Ordinance 25-06-05, an ordinance to establish, approve, and adopt the FY 26 City of Nome Capital Projects Fund Budget. Ordinance 25-06-06, an ordinance to establish, approve, and adopt the FY 26 City of Nome Construction Capital Projects Fund Budget. Ordinance 25-06-07, an ordinance to establish, approve, and adopt the FY 26 City of Nome Port of Nome Fund Budget. And ordinance 25-06-08, an ordinance to establish, approve, and adopt the FY 26 City of Nome Port of Nome Capital Projects Fund Budget.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to pass ordinances 25-0-6, 25-06.03 through ordinance 25-06-08 inclusive on to second reading and public hearing and final passage at the next meeting?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Councilmember Johnson, Councilmember Piscoya, any discussion?
Could we talk a little bit about the $500,000 that the general fund budget is looking at? You know, taken from this, I think it's called the school.
Debt service.
Debt service one.
Mhm.
Is that on page 80?
Yes.
Could you kind of explain what we're doing there under the terms of the general fund budget where we're withdrawing 500,000?
Yeah. Nikki, I would like Nikki to go
Just so we
through that.
understand it.
Yeah. On page 80.
The school bond fund is assigned by city council, and the council can reassign funds from the school bond fund for another purpose. The school bond fund checking account has about 1.2 million in it. Taking out 500,000 will leave 700,000 in the checking account, and we have debt service through October of 2028 for about 291,000.
So there's a transfer out of this one fund number to the general fund, I guess is where it ends up going.
Yes.
Yep.
So we have debt service payments for 3 years?
To 28.
Yes, it will
That's
be
the
done
last.
in October of 2028.
And total was
291,000.
And we have no other debt service? Or scheduled
Not
maturities?
no.
So just curious, why did we designate 1.2 million in a fund that we only have less than 300,000 in payments, scheduled payments for? Why do we have such a large, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Great.
So that fund is used to help fund the school's capital projects. And so an example would be the roofing project, or, I mean, we own all of those school buildings. And so the security, the ADA and security project that we were talking about. And so there's some funds that were reimbursed from the bathroom project at the ACSA, right? And so we got about 70% back from that, and it was designated by the council to be used for specific purposes. And so that still resides in there, in that fund, but it could be used for other projects as well. We asked the school district if they had any projects other than the current one that they're undergoing with the roof project this year, and they do not.
So it's used not just for like, debt service on school bonds, but it's also used for
Capital projects for
capital
the schools.
projects.
Yeah. But there's no limitations as to what we can
We can
really
designate
use
it.
that for if we needed to, other than the about 280,000 that was kind of designated, or for lack of other words, promised to the security and ADA upgrades.
So if we approve that transfer, we'll still have roughly 400,000 left in that debt service / school project fund. And we don't
confirmed
currently
again.
have any projects scheduled, which.
Not this fiscal year.
No, I confirmed again with Jamie today on that.
So Nikki, can, on that, is that net payments or gross payments? Before,
So the debt service is the full payment of 291,000.
okay,
There is in this F-26 budget, a reimbursement from the state on the 2015 1A. And that will be paid in full in October of 2025. The 2015 1B does not get reimbursed by the state. And we will continue to pay that until 2028.
so I think the answer that Dan gave was a good one. But I think one of the other contributors to the balances of that is there were a number of years that the school, that the legislature was not funding the reimbursement. And then all of a sudden, one year, they made like 3 or 4 years good at one time.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other questions on this? Yeah, okay. Roll call please on passing these items B through H inclusive on.
Councilmember Martinson.
Yes.
Councilmember Green.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Miller.
Yes.
Councilmember Piscoya.
Yes.
Thank you. Those ordinances all pass on to second reading. That brings us to I and J, having to do with ADC water loans. Mr. Clerk, will you read both of those by title?
Resolution 25-05-03, a resolution authorizing application, approval, and acceptance of a loan from the Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation, Alaska Clean Water Fund, to provide loan financing for equipment purchase. Resolution 25-05-04, a resolution authorizing application, approval, and acceptance of a loan from the Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation, Alaska Drinking Water Fund, to provide loan financing for equipment purchase.
Thank you. These items, you'll notice that they're exact the same. It's 432,000 from each of the ADC low interest water funds, one being the clean water to be used for any kind of sewer related items, and then the like amount from the drinking water fund. With this, the utility will procure a new vac truck. We have one. I erroneously gave the city the old one to clean storm drains, and we can't live with just one of those units. It's extremely important to the operation and maintenance. So the desire is to get a new one utilizing again these low interest funds available from DEC federal loan program to be paid back over 15 years, I believe it is. And the finance charge on it is currently it's set somehow to the T-bill rate, but is 2.1%. And I don't know that I agree with the 30 years that was put in here, but that's what these loans would be utilized for primarily. And then there's a utility truck of some kind also envisioned to be procured. So the utility board recommends these loans to you, and they're here for your consideration.
They can be paid off in advance.
They can, yes.
Is this a fixed interest rate or does this fluctuate based on a certain maturity of a T-bill? or-
No, once the rate is set, based on what the T-bill stuff is today.
At the time.
And once you sign the document, that's your rate.
Up to 30 years.
Yes. And it used to be that they were pretty much 1.5% and have been for 20 years or more. It's just recently creeped up just slightly, but it's still, for 2.1% finance charge versus even 2.1% interest, there's quite a bit of difference in that calculation.
So the back truck costs 400,000.
No, it costs
split in two.
800 or,
So 800,000.
I'm sorry, it costs 652. It's looking, but it does not include, I guess that's the truck itself, but doesn't include the various attachments that need to be on it as well as the freight, so.
So total amount.
It's about 700,000. I'm sorry, it's a little bit more than 700. It's about 760,000. Well, that's not right because there's a pickup truck for about 80,000. I think that's in there as well.
So there's two separate loans, each for about 432,000.
Yeah, you because the one for the drinking water, for the clean water probably will be 98% for the back truck. The one on the drinking water side would be, say, 90 or something.
So you may not use the entire amount.
Exactly.
Of the loan.
Yeah. But you have to do an allocation of where it's used. And DC did agree to the utilization of the two programs.
I'm just curious, why is the city council approving debt for the utilities? Don't utilities usually make that decision on their own?
No, not for these debts because they are they're essentially considered while they're unsecured, it's kind of like a bond type of financing arrangement, and so the long-term financing.
So long-term financing has to be approved by the city council?
Yes.
And shorter-term deals?
Yes, can be done by the utility.
Okay.
From this particular type bond, this is very usual. And I'll use this term, which I know will be a little scary, but we're like the guarantee behind it. So they look for someone that can adjust rates, pay, and we're the guarantee.
So the city is essentially guaranteeing this
Yes.
obligation.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like any other.
Yeah, it's typical for these loans.
Should I make a motion so we could?
Yes, please.
Sure. I'll make a motion to
adopt
these resolutions so we can discuss them.
05, 03, and 04.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Yeah.
Seconded by Mr. Priscoya. You got the first item?
Yes. Councilmember Martin.
All right, roll call, please.
Roll call. Councilmember Miller.
Yes.
Councilmember Piscoya.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Martin.
Yes.
Councilmember Green.
Yes. Thank you. So those resolutions carry. So that brings us to the reason everybody came to this lovely meeting this evening. Resolution, one of them, resolution 250505. Mr. Clerk, would you read that resolution by title?
Resolution 25-05-05, a resolution setting the city of Nome mill rate for calendar year 2025.
Thank you. So we are under discussion on setting the mill rate.
Make a motion first,
No motion
right?
yet.
I'll make a motion to set the mill rate,
I'll second.
11.5.
Okay, yeah, so that's what's in the resolution. All right. So a motion has been made and seconded to adopt resolution 250505, setting the calendar year 2025 mill rate for the city of Nome at 11.5 mils.
adjustment, discussion.
I'm not suggesting anything, I'm just helping you out there, John.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's, I am definitely losing steam. Everybody happy with 11.5?
Yes.
Okay, we'll do that. Yeah, if there's no proposals to amend the resolution.
So the question I have is, what is dependent upon 11.5 mill rate in terms of the budget so that we balance the budget, or sort of balance it? Is it dependent on a 2% sales tax increase?
As it is, as presented, yes. And no adjustment to, the 11.5.
So we're highly confident, or city administration is highly confident that we're gonna get this 2% sales tax rate across finish line.
We're gonna beat every bush.
Well, if there is no proposed adjustments to the resolution, roll call please on its adoption.
Roll call. Councilmember Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Martinson.
Yes.
Councilmember Green.
Yes.
Councilmember Miller.
Yes.
Councilmember Piscoyo.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Thank you. Resolution 250505 is accepted. Resolution 25-05-06. Mr. Clerk, will you read that by title, please?
Resolution 25-05-06, a resolution setting the city of Nome contribution for the FY26 Nome School District budget.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt resolution 25-05-06?
I'll make that motion. Second.
Councilmember Piscoyo, Councilmember Martinson. Any discussion?
So under discussion, that reads that we are contributing $3.4 million, is that right?
Correct.
Correct. Was anybody else willing to, in general, not specifically? Sorry.
Who wants to make the amendment?
Willing to ask them to take some money out of their. Are you conducting a straw poll? No, I'm not. So, I don't know, we learned of an extra $900,000 tonight in the savings account that was not, we weren't aware of before.
From the capital budget, this, like you said, 3.3 and all their other projects, still left on $450,000 capital budget or capital fund. After everything they were going to go through.
Yeah, I'm just throwing this out there. I'm not suggesting, we're just talking. If we take $800,000 out of that extra $900,000, we'd only have to go back to the voters for 6% sales tax increase on this year.
Say that again?
If we reduce the contribution by $800,000, which in the savings fund that they found, extra $900,000, if we just use $800,000 of that, we would reduce the proposed sales tax from 7% to 6% year-round, based on this projection of $1.6 million of revenues coming in from a 7% year-round sales tax adjustment.
So instead of, just to back up,
Yeah.
on Friday, we discussed the idea of kind of spreading the pain around. Non-public schools contribution would be reduced by $500,000. The city of Nome operating budget would be reduced by a similar amount. And we propose either a 6% year-round
sales tax or a 7% seasonal. That was, until today, that was what we had recommended, or at least I had. City management said, we can't cut the city operating budget anymore. I'm not sure I agree with that, that statement. But my idea was that we everybody shares in it, you know, non-public schools, city of Nome, and the voters by approving an increase. The way the budget is currently written is that neither Nome Public Schools or the city of Nome reduces their budget from what it's currently stated. And we asked the voters to approve essentially a $1.8 million increase in sales tax by 2% year round. I would not call that evenly balanced at all. So, to increase Nome Public Schools contribution or limit that or reduce their contribution by more, 800,000, and not ask the city of Nome to reduce their operating budget further, doesn't feel like it's a balanced solution to me. Dan, if you care to share that.
Well, so they'd be appropriating from their savings, so would we?
We already are, yeah, 500,000.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We'd be doing
because
more.
the city has not reduced their operating budget from the first draft, or very little. Except for closing the visitor center. That's about it. It's not what I would call a balanced solution. So that's where I'm at. If we are going to ask Nome Public Schools to reduce their contribution above and beyond what would, the 500,000, I would request a similar concession for the city.
Let me understand, you're saying if they take cash out of one of their reserves, whichever one it is, that's a cut.
From the contribution amount.
But it's not a cut.
Oh, it's a cut from last year's funding amount, absolutely. it is.
I get that, but are we asking them, the city, to?
You're asking, well, so.
I'm just trying to understand what you're saying.
Mark's suggestion was to reduce the funding amount by an additional 300,000.
I was.
Is it an idea?
Yes.
Yeah, he wasn't like making a motion or anything.
Thank you.
Or straw pulling, right?
Well, I understand what Lee is saying is that what you're referring to is the city reduced their budget by $500,000 from expenses, basically.
I didn't see any significant reductions from the first draft, and I'm sorry if I sound like a broken record. But originally we were asking 500,000 from non-public schools. Now, the idea is that we're going to possibly ask for 800,000.
Or compromise at 500.
I would not support that at all.
The
Don't
800,000.
say that out loud.
No. Our
not
compromise
even
down to
close.
about 500,000.
That's a lot.
But that's what we're talking about, basically. Another
I'm just saying that there's
300.
additional
You said
funds.
800.
But the difference is that we're not asking to take it out of any operating budget of theirs. Not to cut staff, not to cut supplies.
I have not recommended we cut one person.
Right.
Not one.
Right, no, I know that. But I said that's the difference is that we're asking to take some money out of savings, whatever that number might be.
And under the current budget, the city's already taking 500,000
Right.
through that school debt service.
Right.
Fund.
And
Whatever the concession is, I ask that it be equal.
well,
And so,
maybe we're back to 500,000 then.
or the city would take 800,000, if you want both, the city would take 800,000 from their accounts or through operating cost reductions, whatever they select. And we ask the school, as long as it's equal, as long as it's balanced, that's been a pretty consistent theme of mine.
And I honestly think that if we go to voters and ask for a 2% sales tax increase without meaningful reductions on our side, I think we risk failing that bond or whatever it's called, proposition. I think it's a high risk.
So let me ask the question, I guess. So we're asking the city, or the suggestion is the city take 500,000 out of their budget just in expenses, regardless. We're not saying reduce the budget by 500,000. And if you can come up with 500,000 more in revenue, great. We're just talking about cut the expenses by 500,000 regardless.
Well, it's either an increase in revenue or a cut in expenses.
Okay, so
Again,
okay,
as long as it's equal, that's what I am.
right. So we're asking then the city to cut $500,000 in expenses, and then to have it equal for the school district. They can just take money out of their coffer because they happen to have it there. But we're not asking them to reduce any program or any offering.
That's not our role. Our role is not to get into, specific areas of the budget. The city council's function with respect to public schools is a funding model. We don't have the ability to say, oh, you need to cut this area or this area. We can't do that. All we can control is what we fund non-public schools at. So I was just building on Mark's idea. If we were to cut 800,000 for non-public schools from a combination of either fund appropriations and or, operating expenses, if you're telling me we can't cut any more operating expenses, then I would request a similar fund balance withdrawal or whatever of 800,000 as well. Again, I think it's important not only to keep things somewhat equitable, but also the message that we send to voters is we've got to put our best foot forward. We do. If we're, I think, have a reasonable hope of getting a significant sales tax increase approved. I just don't have the confidence level that maybe other council members do that this will get passed without some significant, meaningful reductions on our side. So I hope, maybe I'm wrong.
What staff should have done is brought the existing budget that we're currently in to the first budget session and then start cutting from there. What you did is you cut before you brought it.
Well,
The same big year.
But that happened somewhat in previous years too, is that the way that Glenn made up for some of the differences was by not filling positions all year long. And so had he kept those in the budget and not just, not filled them, then the original budget would have been higher in those years too. And essentially we did the same thing here, just in a different way.
So if we did 800,000 from each, whether it's in operating expenditure reductions or in, pulling it from the savings account, does that get us down to a 1%? So 800,000 for each, 1.6 total, does that get us down to potentially a 1% sales tax increase, either year-round or seasonal, 7%?
And you're speaking to the half year, correct?
No, for this fiscal year.
For this fiscal year.
I want to ask Nikki what that number actually is. Is that actually 1.6? Nikki, what is that number that needs to be made up?
For 1%, the estimate was 800,000 with a December 1 start date at 6%. And then at 7%, it was 1.6 million with the same December 1 start date.
Is that something that's acceptable? Which may require the city to draw a little bit more out there.
We'd have to look and see.
The
what
budget
else could
already
be
shows
done.
us drawing 500, so it's either
Another
an
300.
additional 300,000 of either operating expenditures or from the savings account.
It's true.
I mean, Lee has said we can't cut anymore. I mean,
Right now in services, but
I'm not saying that, I'm not disagreeing with you, but I think, if we both do that, if both Nome Public Schools and the city of Nome shared $1.6 million, and there's 1% sales tax increase either year round or a seasonal 2% increase. From my perspective, that's a little bit more palatable to the voters. That's where I'm coming from.
So I guess so we're taking, money out of either savings at either place to balance the budget presently, but not looking at a change in the services delivered. So I guess to me, it's kind of like we're going to take this money, and run some programs with it, but that the school savings accounts aren't much bigger, or have more in them than the cities do, and so maybe this patches it for 2 or 3 years. If this was the continuation of it, then all of a sudden they don't have any of those reserves to draw on, but yet the program level is still the same or has increased from the prior year. Down here 3 years, all of a sudden the sky's going to be falling again. Am I seeing it wrong, or?
Nope, you're spot on.
Okay, well, so I don't like that idea of spending down the.
You don't like the idea of spending down savings, basically, right?
Yeah, I mean, on a recurring,
Right.
I mean, we know the issues that have got us, why we're having to make some hard decisions now. Besides, still having to make those hard decisions moving forward, then, the school's gonna have to make those same things too.
Well, and I think too, as we talked about on Friday, that, to get through this budget cycle, we're gonna work on longer term solutions, whether it's, removal of exemptions within the sales tax or property tax codes, the fuel tariff, I think the government to government idea about sharing, so the cost of some of these services for our tribal partners. I mean, there's a lot of longer term
Mark's favorite
grants,
syntax.
grants and stuff. So there's a lot of these longer term. So it's not like, this is it, we're just gonna forget about it.
This year,
Right. This is just to get us through.
we gotta get to where we have those revenues coming in. If it's a 1 or a 2.
And I don't really want to get into those longer term discussions tonight, because that's not facing.
That's one of the problems we have, is that we don't circle back on a lot of things, and government moves slowly, and when we do, you're not in the heat of making a budget work, you're looking at theoreticals, and that's why things don't move a lot of
So
times.
Lee's already said I can't cut the operating budget anymore without seriously impacting services. And so if we're gonna ask Nome Public Schools for 800,000, I would ask the city for 800,000.
So the number is 800 now, not 500?
So presently, we have 500,000 in there contributing from the city, right?
Right now, we already have 500,000. We would either,
Correct.
I'm hoping that Lee could actually find some, reductions in operating expenses, so we wouldn't have to take another 300,000. And yes, I am pushing a little bit on this issue. Good.
Yeah, and if we ask the school to pull 500,000 out of their savings to match basically the city's 500,000, then we would adjust the sales tax to what in order to balance the budget?
Well, you figure this year,
6.5.
You got a $2.2 million hole.
Yep.
That's what,
Right.
so however you fill up from whatever source.
Well, yeah, but either we take it from savings or we increase revenues in some sort.
We've talked about a 1% increase, about 800,000, I think, in additional revenue.
give or take, yeah.
So over time, I mean, this has come up before that, some of the rules or statutory deadlines and requirements, they just don't fit well together from a calendar perspective. And, there's So we're obligated to do this contribution to the school district within 30 days, not knowing what our final budget is. They have to put out a budget earlier. They don't know what the legislature is going to be doing. And so in order to allow this discussion to continue, I think that, some more of this can fall out, but, if we park or, reduce our additional contribution commitment as of May 27th, 2025, which does not mean, that there isn't ensuing time, here to then revisit the amount of, that's kind of, I'm not gonna say in contention, but that's been discussed. And so I'm gonna suggest that 500,000 come out of that additional contribution at this time, and which would then make the total school contribution 2.9 from the city. And then if the school board determines to take that 500K to match their, balance their budget out of their savings, well, they kind of would foreclose the need for any immediate discussion on it. It's the timing of things, and there's definitely not agreement around here, I don't sense, on what way to go. And so, that would be a way to meet the timeline that's required based on their receipt of their budget. And then it also allows the city and the school to take another look at their documentation, their budget calendar and considerations to see how do we come up with something that is will work long term as opposed to just be a short term Band-Aid. So I just picked a number of 500K. I've heard 500, 800,
What
whatever.
about 700?
Okay.
Don't vote great, you, just an idea.
700,000
reduction in, don't public schools funding, 700,000 in a reduction either of operating expenses total or fund balance contributions. You're already at 500 through the school debt service fund, and that would leave 800,000 left. 1% sales tax increase should cover that, assuming the voters would approve in October. 7, 7, and 8 should comes at 2.2, right?
Yes.
Thank God my brain still works. Is that acceptable?
I make a motion.
Well, wait, just a minute. What are you?
Amend the motion. You need to amend the motion.
I know, I make a motion to amend the motion.
Yeah, okay, so what's the amendment here? Just, go ahead.
To amend the contribution to the school from 3.4 to 2.7.
Okay.
2,700,000.
Yep.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion, Councilmember Johnson and Henderson, which then sets the additional contribution at 1,268,344, as opposed to the 1,968,000. So the numbers that get changed in here are the 3.4 to 2.7, and the last line there, 1.9 down to 1.2 and change. Okay, any discussion on that? Further discussion?
I probably said enough things.
Okay, roll call, please. Roll call, please.
Roll call on the amendment. Hold on a second.
Yep.
Councilmember Green.
Yes.
Councilmember Martin.
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson,
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Piscoya,
Yes.
Councilmember Miller.
Yes.
That amendment passed.
Thank you. So resolution 25-05-06 as once amended is now up for consideration. Is there any further discussion?
So just to clarify with city manager, if this passes and both the city and Nome Public Schools fund equal amount, 700,000, either through operating cost reductions or savings account contributions, we should only have to put out, and we're not making a decision, and I'm not making a recommendation, but if it's a balance the budget, we should only have to put on the ballot in October a 1% sales tax increase year-round or a seasonal tax of 7% for 4 months. I'm not saying that's, we can decide.
Based on the concept I'm hearing, yes.
Based on the budget that we have.
This amendment.
Right.
And the city contribute either reducing their expenditures by $200,000 more or contributing $200,000 more out of savings.
Yeah, either a combination of operating expense reductions or additional.
Roll call, please.
Roll call on resolution 25-05-06. Councilmember Miller,
Yes.
Councilmember Piscoya,
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson,
Yes.
Councilmember Martin,
Yes.
Councilmember Green.
Yes.
Thank you. So the resolution as once amended passes. There's more work in front of us again.
Guys.
That brings us on to citizens' comments. Are there those in the audience that would like to address the council this evening?
Sorry, excuse my voice. Danny Smith-Eisler. Sorry, I was trying to gather my thoughts and have some things that I want to prioritize. A lot of my comments are focused on the non-department section of the budget. Honestly, was here last week advocating for the preschool and supporting the community center as well. I'm curious if all the line items in this section of the budget are monetary amounts or if there are some in lieu of expenses, such as waiving rents. I don't know if that's like if we're contributing to an organization on this line, is it strictly a monetary donation or is it in lieu of? Okay. And did the Iron Dog and Iditarod put in a request this year for donation? Do they do that annually to the city, or do we just put that in our budget to contribute to them?
No, there is actually a discussion that occurs with both of them as to a contractor contribution being requested.
Okay.
And there are some non-cash items that go into that as well.
Okay. So I'm just curious if the 25,000 contributing to Iditarod is in addition to waiving the rent for the mini,
Yes,
which
it is.
could be.
Yes.
So they were contributing more than just 25,000 to the Iditarod.
Correct. And to Iron Dog.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the city shop rent. Okay. I just want to make clear I'm in support of both these events, but if these organizations who are nonprofits knew that the city was contributing to their nonprofit and completely cutting support to our local nonprofits, if they would still feel right about getting those significant donations. It just really stands out when you're looking at that page of the budget. I appreciate the attention to the Nome Public Schools savings account and their ability to possibly utilize those funds. The nonprofits in the non-department section of the budget don't have these savings accounts to support them. The city went through and cut budgets. So I'm strongly asking you to consider making only a cut to these contributions this year, and not completely cut off this year, to give us some time, that being the preschool and the Nome Community Center, to find other ways to support their grant match and do other grant research. The cuts made to the city budgets And no public schools may not be completely costing people's jobs, but absolutely zeroing out the lines to the nonprofits the city's been contributing to will cut jobs. We won't be able to have the positions we have. Preschool and adult community center. I'm greatly concerned about the Nome preschool being in the FY25 budget and it not being paid with a month left in the fiscal year. There was no word of that being completely cut. There's been many communications between the preschool manager and city finance, and that still hasn't been paid. So that's a huge concern because you're taking taking away the 60,000 that, or the 65,000 that we're anticipating for next year, but you're also taking the 65,000 from last year. You'll notice if you look at it's right here on the budget. If you look at the 2024 actuals, or the 2025 fiscal year to date actuals, that line does not.
That's a point in time, but it's fully funded as requested last year.
Yeah.
It'll be paid before June 30th.
Okay. Just with cuts going on, that was a great concern because we have been communicating for it. The school year is over and we haven't been paid for amount that we had in the budget all year anticipating.
And did you put in a request for that payment?
Yeah, she's been communicating with finance staff. So I just want to make sure we didn't misunderstand because cutting us 120,000 is different than just cutting 60,000.
Yes, that was not the case.
So I just want to make sure that will be processed. I can tell you from experience, if we didn't have early childhood education, many students would be causing the Nome public schools more money in meeting IEPs. I had very delayed children. They needed many supports in early childhood education, but the support that they received there has made an impact that they might not need an additional education support in when they go into the school district. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Smith-Heisler. Go ahead.
I made a note to remember to sign myself on the sign-in sheet. I noticed the spouses in last week's minutes were just +1. My name was not listed. I was just a +1 to my spouse there, even though I provided some comments. So you don't have me as an attendee, but you have me as a commenter. Just know.
Thank you. All right. Anybody else from citizens' comments? If not, we'll move on. The rest is comments. Does anybody want to make comments tonight, or are we done?
I have one comment.
Okay.
Unrelated to the budget. Well,
Yeah.
kind of.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I just didn't know. So.
It will be brief.
Okay, very fine. So I don't have anything to say from the utilities. I don't know, Mr. Manager, you don't have anything. So council member comments, roll call then. Thank you.
Councilmember Green?
No comments.
Councilmember Miller?
The only comment that I have is that I would like to see us, if we are going to put the sales tax into the next election, that we also consider other taxes and bringing those to the voters at the same time. Like Mark said, government can be slow moving and let's try to avoid that. So thinking about bed tax, of course, the sales tax, and then also the, as we've been referencing, like the sin taxes. That's all.
Councilmember Henderson?
I want to thank the planning commission for finally getting the downtown zoning changes to first reading. That was a long process, and I really appreciate the flexibility of Aaron and the planning commission to finally get that in front of the council. I think it's a good product. And I want to thank the VFW, the city of Nome, Bearing Air for the Memorial Day parade, and that was cool. If you haven't seen that before, and that was my first time watching Bull Bearing here, and the dropping of the wreath, that was pretty cool.
Yep.
So, that's it. Thanks.
Great, thank you.
Councilmember Biscoy.
I'll echo Councilmember Miller's comments on all the other taxes onto the ballot. I think at the last meeting it was like $20,000 to hold an election, so if you do all at once, that'd be great.
Councilmember Martin.
I think if you put too many tax things on one ballot, you're gonna get everybody that votes none on all of them, so you might wanna think about that too.
Yeah.
That's just my thought, as we all talked about it. Who knows?
Yeah,
Talk about it more
that's what
later.
happens in Anchorage.
Yeah.
Too many bond issues.
That's all I got.
Councilmember Johnson.
So your predecessor, every summer, your predecessor, city manager, would get a request to put more basketball hoops up around town. Because we used to have them back when some guys were younger, that several basketball hoops that the city maintained or made available. And then now we're down to, I don't know how many community ones there are. I can't think of any.
None.
None, right? So for several years, we made that request, and there was always, oh yeah, we're looking into it. It's not a really big expense. We have a skating rink over there that maybe have some potential in that area to put it. There's several other areas. I know. I don't know if the behind St. Joe's, if that's cleared ground or not. Be able to put it back there again, but that was a very popular spot. But maybe you can work with Chip on that and see if we can find some. And I didn't bring this up myself. Actually, I forgot about it, but a longtime citizen that probably too old to play basketball anymore reminded me about it at the wreath thing that afterwards. Yeah, yesterday. He said, "Hey, remember those basketball hoops again this year?" So
And there's money. Nortonstown is contributing money.
there we go.
Really good hands.
That's it? Okay. The Councilmember Henderson caught VFW and Peggy and Jeff. Peggy and I both said about 10 years ago, this is somebody else's turn to do this event, but yet here we're back year after year after year. So for those that would like to take on an event in the community and spearhead it and lead it, including the Midnight Sun, be happy to hear from anybody that would be so inclined, because there's lots of things that happen with one or two people, and if we could spread the joy a little bit, then these things can go as we remember from our childhood. So congratulations to all our graduating seniors. Job well done. Despite COVID and a few other things getting in the middle, we got them out of the gymnasium there, and hopefully with an education that will bring them far. When you look at the statistics for where Alaska rates for education versus other states, we don't have a real good reputation. And I guess it seems to me that there are, there are there are report card items that are our report card as far as testing scores are concerned. It's reading and mathematics and a couple of those things. And I guess I'm just curious how Nome schools compare to other schools in the state. But you take them all, put them together, we're still like 49th out of 50th, I think I've heard, as far as where we raised in educating our people. And more money out the door isn't going to cut it. There needs to be a change in philosophy. And then I just wanted to thank the Isla and Village of Solomon folks for making me get up real early on the holiday to have a little Zoom call, which was super. There just to continue looking at some of the
partnerships that we've had with them and for utility upgrades and looking at a few other funding sources that are out there that the tribes can access and for the benefit of the entire community, and appreciate VOS and their always willing to sit down and look at how, again, it's not a them and us thing, but all working together. So thanks to Isla and Village of Solomon. I don't know when we're going to meet again here to talk about budgets, but we scheduled another work session tonight, in case you forgot. So maybe between the city manager and the city clerk, you guys can come up with that. But essentially, other changes that the council might be interested in before we just start peppering the table on at the final reading that becomes unwieldy, and Nikki's not going to like our math when we add. So
Requests for dates?
yeah, I just don't know what dates are in the thing. I am going to say that on June 3rd, and well, I guess leaving the 2nd, have a couple of meetings with the governor and some other people in Anchorage on the 3rd, returning the 4th. So I'd be out of town for that, but that's not the end of the world if others have different conflicting dates or suggested dates.
Yeah, not June 3rd. Planning Commission's meeting here on June 3rd.
Okay, so maybe you guys can figure out what more might need to be gathered, and then poll people.
4th or 5th.
The 12th or 5th, you said?
4th or 5th.
Oh,
either
4th
one.
or 5th. Thank you. Thursday, the 5th, work?
Does anybody have any issue, or if you don't, we'll go to that.
Okay. How about the 5th of Thursday at 5:30 then?
5th is not good. Thank you.
That's correct.
Oh, well, we're not going to interrupt that.
4th?
Yeah,
Wednesday,
okay. Okay, do the 4th, and Mark, see if I get back, but you may be cheering.
5:30.
You right back.
Yeah. All right. With that, what's this here? Oh, the school calendar?
No, the school.
Oh, okay.
Adjourn?
Yes, that's what I was trying to do for the information. I was looking for the time, which is 9:13 or 9:14, and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.